You're in the Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio. And now, here's Gene Steinberg.
So last week we had Robert Hastings. He's author of UFOs and Nukes, concentrating primarily on UFOs seen in and around nuclear installations, primarily in the USA, but also in some cases around the world. And he has an incredible knowledge of everything about that. So when you talk to him specifically of anything that relates to that, he has it all. He's been studying this stuff for more than 30 years. The only concern I have about investigations of that nature, Chris, is whether or not it leads to tunnel vision. If you focus so much on your specialty, then suddenly maybe you're missing things around the periphery.
Yeah, that's, always a possible kind of stumbling block. But I think in Robert's case, he's really grounded. He seems to have a very good objective sense about his work. He does keep up to speed, I think, in the field in general, unlike some people who tend to really, like you say, specialize and focus in on a single aspect. But I really enjoyed the show, and I really, admire 4 decades worth of work that he's put into it. And it's unfortunate that he has his Emma Woods OCD character out there that's been dogging him. Maybe there's something to it. I think an article came out last week pertaining to that particular controversy of this Carlson character. I'm going to start calling him Emma Carlson.
For those who are wondering what we're talking about here, there's a character who calls herself Emma Woods, who has been stalking UFO abduction researcher David Jacobs for several years. Now, it doesn't mean she doesn't have a case or anything, but she's gotten so obsessive about this stalking that it destroys whatever case she might have. It really does.
The whole anonymity thing really bothers me. She's put up a website, she posts on tons of boards, all under a pseudonym, all for the sole purpose of bringing down David Jacobs. Now, I don't agree, like you mentioned about yourself, I don't agree with a lot of Jacobs' conclusions. I do have a sense that they're rather fear-based, but I don't think anybody should have to go through what he's been going through with this woman. I mean, sure, he set himself up doing hypnotic regressions over the phone, long distance, that sort of thing, but it's getting to the point of beyond ridiculousness when somebody is just on a vendetta to just slag you in every which way possible. So, just much luck to Hastings and his Emma Carlson, and David Jacobs and his Emma Woods.
Well, Jacobs told me last I heard from him via email that he was working on a more extensive rebuttal to her claims. So maybe that will put the matter to rest, but I kind of doubt it, although things have been pretty quiet. I think part of the reason things are pretty quiet is more and more forums will not allow Emma Woods to post until she presents some authentication as to who she really is.
Yeah.
I mean, you can attack anybody from the position of anonymity, but you're attacking them by name. It's not two anonymous people attacking each other. And you have to think, too, what can she fear in terms of repercussions? Because Jacobs knows who she is. She has certainly identified herself to a few of the people who support her. I don't know. Maybe we shouldn't raise that hornet's nest. Let's let sleeping dogs lie. But, here at the Paracast, we have our own group of house critics. In large part, we ignore them. I seldom respond to them. I don't think you have more than once or twice in your fabulous, fated career here.
I do try to stay above the fray. I try to chip in my 2 cents wherever I think it might be appropriate, and maybe give people a little extra, angle to look at a particular topic or issue. But this whole idea of hiding behind avatars and anonymous names, I've always had a problem with it. Of course, you and I, when we post, everybody knows who we are, but you get some of these people with these anonymous tags, and I think it emboldens them to get outside of themselves and be, I think, a little bit more strident than maybe they normally would. I can't recall who told me the story, but they were able to find out who a person was that was dogging them anonymously online, and they showed up at their house and freaked them out. I'd never go to that to those lengths, but it is, I'm willing to put my reputation, in my anonymity to rest and just be who I am, and I think more people out there should do that. And this whole excuse of, well, if my job found out I was posted on a UFO board, I'd get fired. I mean, that's just a convenient excuse. I think we're farther down the road than having to be too concerned about that, unless you're some, lead scientist at a national lab. Maybe then you'd have something to worry about. But for the most part, I don't think people really have that excuse to hang their anonymity on anymore. I think it's this whole subject is pretty much mainstream now, and we need to move forward and everybody step up and claim their opinions and stand behind them as a real person instead of an anonymous avatar and tag.
And of course, if you are a woman living in disability in New Zealand, do you think the paparazzi is going to basically fly across the ocean and seek you out?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Oh, man.
It's going to happen.
Beating the path through the sheep herds to her door.
Ah, well, that could be.
New Zealand? New Zealand's there's more sheep than humans. And I think, what's the saying? The men are men, the women are men, and the sheep are all nervous? Bad joke.
I will not say anything because they claim I tell bad jokes. But the real truth is I don't tell jokes. Occasionally I'll throw one of these old disc jockey puns out. But I do not tell jokes. I want to tell you one thing very quickly about old stuff or an old story. Lately, I've been coming across old friends that I knew in the early stages of my radio career, such as a guy named Bob Kite, or R.J. Kite, who does now the announcing for some of our bumpers over on the Tech Night Owl Live. And some of you who notice or care about these things, you notice on our theme song we have a new voice there. But he's somebody I've known for many years, Bob Zanotti, who actually ran a paranormal radio show on a college station in New Jersey years ago. I was a guest on the show, and now after all these years, I guess he sought us out, and he graciously agreed to do those introductions for the show. Bob Zanotti.
He lent us his manly voice.
He did indeed, and he's a professional voiceover artist, as you can tell from the quality of what he does. But he also has a great collection of the old shows that he did featuring famous UFO personalities who are no longer here. And I'm kind of hoping that we'll get together with Bob in the very near future and get some of this stuff back on the air. I guess he has to digitize the old cassettes and reel-to-reel tape files or something. We'll get him on the air. You'll hear people like August C. Roberts, Dominic Lucchesi, and other people no longer with us, forgotten figures in the UFO field, and perhaps they had very fascinating things to say. We're also hoping to put together a show on Long John Nebel. Now, his shows go back to the 50s. I don't know if there's any copyright or heirs to Long John who might object if we ran segments on the air. We'll have to check about permissions. But I'd love to do that because I think a lot of fascinating things happen there. And maybe listeners then can judge fairly whether or not we've learned anything about paranormal investigations, specifically UFO investigations. In any case, Chris, you set up this week's show, and it's all about a book. And let me give you the name of the book, and then you can explain what this is going about. It's called How the Hippies Saved Physics, Science, Counterculture, and the Quantum Revival. Well, what the heck is that about?
Well, it's a long story, and I'm sure David Kaiser is going to give us a really good, entertaining overview of this wonderful saga that's been going on, still going on actually to this day. But in the early 70s, there were a group of, shall we say, alternative thinking physicists, Jack Sarfati, Nick Herbert, Paul Sarag, Fred Alan Wolf. It was a whole group of these guys that were real radical sort of new thinking physicists, quantum physicists, and they loosely formed a group called the fundamental physics group. Of course, fundamental and physics are misspelled with F's instead of PH's and stuff, and they were rumored to imbibe in quite a wide assortment of psychedelics, as was the custom at the time. And there's some question. This is one thing I want to bring up with Kaiser is, I mean, what role did the psychedelics play in these in their thinking? Because they came up with some radical ideas, including faster than light communication, and
subspace.
The book is fascinating.
Yeah, that's going to be David Kaiser coming up next on
the Paracast.
I've got to tell you about this. GoToMeeting by Citrix, the way I meet online with my colleagues, has just added high-definition group video conferencing. It's called GoToMeeting with HD Faces. Now you can collaborate with anyone around the world face-to-face. And I've used GoToMeeting HD Faces because it's awesome. You see the facial expressions, and that can express so much more than words. And of course, the video quality is so clear and natural, it's got the highest resolution in the industry. Nothing compares. GoToMeeting with HD Faces will make your online meetings even more personal, engaging, and effective. Plus, it's so easy to use. All you need is an internet connection and a webcam. I want you to try GoToMeeting with HD Faces. My listeners can try it free for 30 days. Visit GoToMeeting.com. Click the Try It Free button. Use the promo code PODCAST. The promo code is PODCAST at GoToMeeting.com.
On the average, Americans work between 45 to 50 years hoping to build up enough wealth to retire and live out their golden years. Unfortunately, with taxation, the rising cost of food, energy, housing, and medical, many retirees are forced to live below the poverty line. Is this a flaw free enterprise, or is our monetary unit we call the Federal Reserve Note forcing us into perpetual debt, ensuring inflation and higher taxes? These questions and more can be answered by reading G. Edward Griffin's book, The Creature from Jekyll Island. Congressman Ron Paul states it's what every American needs to know about central bank power. A gripping adventure into the secret world of international banking cartel. Hi, this is Ted Anderson. I will give a silver dollar from the early 1900s to anyone who purchases this book. Call 1-800-686-2237 and order a copy today. It's critical that the public be made aware of the system. Call and order your copy today at 1-800-686-2237. That's 1-800-686-2237.
Are you tired of spending money for metal canning lids year after year? Then stop! Stop buying metal lids and get Tatler reusable canning lids. Made of USDA and FDA-approved food-grade plastic, Tatler canning lids let you safely store emergency preparedness foods for years. Traditional metal lids are single-use throwaways that contain BPA, but Tatler canning lids are indefinitely reusable and guaranteed to last a lifetime when used as designed for home canning, and contain no BPA. Tatler lids are dishwasher safe, perfect for standard pressure or water bath canning, eliminate food spoilage from acid corrosion, fit standard mason jars, and are proudly made in the USA. Place orders by phone at 877-747-2793 or go to reusablecanninglids.com. That's 1-877-747-2793 or go to reusablecanninglids.com. That's reusablecanninglids.com. Tatler Reusable Canning Lids, the original since 1976.
If you're concerned about radiation poisoning from Japan in the air, water, or food and can't find potassium iodide, go to RestoreYourHealthNow.com and choose Liquid Zeolite. Liquid Zeolite is hands down the best product to remove radiation from your body and safely removes toxins, heavy metals, boosts energy levels, and promotes a strong immune system. For fatigue, muscle weakness, headaches, memory loss, influenza, joint pain, or toxic radiation poisoning, use Liquid Zeolite from RestoreYourHealthNow.com. Liquid Zeolite is so powerful it was used to clean up contamination in Chernobyl, yet so gentle you won't even know you're taking it. Liquid Zeolite comes with a money-back guarantee, but is only available at RestoreYourHealthNow.com. Learn how to get free bottles of Liquid Zeolite at RestoreYourHealthNow.com. That's RestoreYourHealthNow.com or call 800-880-9976. Call 800-880-9976 today and learn how to get free bottles of Liquid Zeolite.
America's #1 source for independent talk radio for over a decade. We are the GCN Radio Network.
We want to hear from you. If you have a comment or question about the Paracast, send it to news@theparacast.com. That's news@theparacast.com. And don't forget to visit our famous Paracast community forums at forum.theparacast.com. Get in on all the action at forum.theparacast.com.
Hey, we're back at the Paracast with Gene and Chris, and it's my pleasure to announce and introduce to the audience our today's guest, which is David Kaiser. He's an MIT graduate, and he's written a very provocative book that I read a review of the book, and David, I just instantly knew that we should get you on the show and talk about this. It's a little bit outside of our normal purview, which is the paranormal. But when you look at people like Jack Sarfati and Nick Herbert, these guys are they're pretty paranormal in their own way. So I thought that this would be a good opportunity to open up our subject matter on the show and get you on. I really enjoyed the book. It was very entertaining. You were able to take pretty complex subject matter and present it in an easy-to-understand layman, for the average layman. There's a little math in there, but nothing, it's not rocket science. Just the whole way that you were able to present this wonderful process that these gentlemen went through, these scientists went through, and are still going through to some extent. We'll talk about that, I'm sure, later on in the show, what some of these gentlemen are up to. But why don't you give us a little background on yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself, but also how you became involved in writing this book, How the Hippies Saved Physics.
Sure, I'd be glad to. I should start off with just a quick correction. Actually, I'm not an MIT graduate, but I do teach there now, so I'm trying to make more MIT graduates. But anyway.
My bad.
I want to ask you a fast question then. We have a controversy in the paranormal field about a guy named Philip Imbrogno who claims he went to MIT. Did you ever hear of him?
I haven't, but that's not conclusive either way.
Well, they haven't either. That's the problem. Go ahead, please.
I see. Okay. So I was just going to say that, right now I am a professor at MIT. I teach both in the program in Science, Technology, and Society, and also in the Department of Physics. And I came to this topic, the way the book really got started was, as a kid, as a high school kid, I was an avid reader, popular science books. I wanted to read everything I could get my hands on about modern physics. And among the many, paperbacks that I got really excited about as a kid, one was Fritjof Capra's book, The Tao of Physics. That book is probably well known to many of your listeners. Runaway, amazing, international blockbuster bestseller these days. It turns out that's not how it started out, but that's certainly where it is today. And so I read that book as a kid, and to be honest, I wasn't all that excited or really into the kind of Eastern spirituality side, but I was really enamored of his explanations, his introduction to ideas from relativity, from quantum theory, and that book really, really stuck with me. When I got to college, I got really excited about the notion of Bell's theorem and quantum entanglement. I'm sure we'll talk about it in some detail later on, but that was the sort of quantum weirdness, the notion that quantum theory is painting a picture for us of the world that just seems so out of whack with our intuitions and with what we're used to. That was really captivating. I mean, that really grabbed me. And then in grad school, I was working on my physics dissertation. I had the opportunity to do a benchtop experiment on entanglement, on Bell's theorem. It turns out the very first version of that experiment was done by a physicist named John Clauser. And when I did a little more digging, it turns out Clauser had done that experiment in Berkeley in the 70s. Fritjof Capra, who wrote The Tao of Physics, was also in Berkeley in the 70s around that same time. And in fact, they knew each other. They were both members of this little weird kind of eccentric ragtag group. They call themselves the Fundamental Physics Group, and that's the group that I really focus on for this book. So in hindsight, there are many kind of arrows along the way that led me to this group and to try to write that book.
Well, first of all, Bell's theorem really does play it's a pivotal subject in the book and in these scientists' process. Why don't you give us kind of a layman's thumbnail sketch of what Bell's theorem is so our listeners can understand how these guys were so excited and inspired to work in this realm?
Sure. Bell's theorem is one of these quintessential examples of just quantum weirdness. It's on a level with Schrodinger's cat, or you name your favorite weird thought experiment. So Bell's theorem is named for physicist John Bell. He published it in a really totally obscure journal in 1964, got completely ignored by physicists for a long time. But the group in Berkeley that I write about, they were among the earliest to really pick up on this and get excited. So Bell's theorem seems to suggest that quantum particles that have interacted at some point in the past in all kinds of actually pretty mundane ways, nothing fancy about it, that they can retain a kind of connection with each other, even if those particles have moved arbitrarily far apart. So what it seems to imply is if we sort of tickle a particle here, we make some measurement on an electron, completely mundane, straightforward thing, it should make its partner particle dance instantaneously, even if that particle is, a galaxy away. It boggles the mind that these two things which are no longer in contact with each other. They stopped interacting long ago, and yet they can retain this almost like a kind of telepathic style link. At least that's when people struggle to put those equations into words, they come up with words like that. There's a weird connection between them that is really not like what we would see around us, at least in the ordinary world. So Bell's theorem is one of these examples where the quantum world can just depart really quite radically from our expectations.
So this is really a Bell-Rock sort of foundation to quantum entanglement, I think would be the term?
In fact, that's right. That's basically synonymous. Bell's theorem nowadays is often known as quantum entanglement or non-locality. These are all basically pointing to the same idea.
Well, what about it? I mean, let's start kind of at the beginning. Why don't you give us a sense of who these fundamental physics groups were, who the individuals were, and kind of let's set the stage a little bit about the times around that the Bay Area. These are wild and woolly times, and these guys, I don't think. I think it's safe to say that they were quite psychedelically aware. I'm sure they were doing psychedelics like most people of their age at that time. Why don't you give us a sense of how this group got together, the struggles that they had in the beginning of their process, and sort of give us a sense of the landscape there.
Sure, yeah. The group that they formed, they called themselves, a very playful title, the Fundamental Physics Group. They spelled physics with an F. They're clearly having a good time. And it really had a core of maybe 8 or 10 members. The group the weekly meetings would grow or contract. It could be as many as 40 or 50, but there were really about 8 or 10 of them who kind of saw it through every week for about almost 4 years. So it was a long-running, informal but long-running group. And like you say, these were basically folks who were largely down on their luck at the time. They had almost all of them had completed PhDs in physics from some of the nation's most elite, premier graduate programs. These were incredibly well-trained, smart physicists, places like Columbia and Stanford and Berkeley and Illinois and, you name it. But they had finished their training just when the bottom fell out of the physics profession. It was an incredibly hard time to get anything like a kind of standard job in physics in the early 70s. At one point in 1971, for example, there were more than 1,000 young physicists registered looking for jobs and 50 jobs on offer, 1,000 to 50. I mean, we're talking, the market had just fallen through the floor. A kind of speculative bubble had burst. It's like a Bernie Madoff kind of scheme,
Before we go on, I wanted to just mention here, it seems like we're reliving that experience today because the bottom has fallen out. Today, you have people with advanced degrees today who are lucky to get employed at a fast food restaurant for one of the same reasons. Yeah.
That's right. And so we've gone through these boom and bust cycles actually a few times in recent history, in the last few decades.
I want to get into this as we progress through our segments of the show. Our guest is David Kaiser. Yes, he is a professor at MIT. You can find his name on their site. It's real. This time, we got somebody from MIT. The co-host is Chris O'Brien. I'm Gene Steinberg. You're in
the Paracast.
Ray Perkins, a reclusive veteran burned out from the Gulf War, lives tortured by relentless, perplexing nightmares. Nightmares of a horrific battle in deep space and of a mysterious woman suffering in agony for her devastated world. A woman not yet born, calling across centuries to him. Then, a coincidence leads him to his destiny, his chance to alter the universe. Attack of the Rockoids. The former fiction editor for Star Wars and Indiana Jones, Robert Simpson, writes, "The soul of the novel Attack of the Rockoids lies in its heart and passion for building a convincing tale of a love that spans the galaxy. A thrilling story. Attack of the Rockoids is available now. Read a sample chapter and get a special discount off of the cover price at our website, rockoids.com. That's ROCKOIDS.com. Attack of the Rockoids, a novel in the grand science fiction tradition.
Ready to save? Then you're ready for the Super Summer Sale at Herbal Healer Academy. Herbal Healer has been the leader in quality natural supplements for 23 years. Log on to herbalhealer.com and take advantage of Herbal Healer Academy's incredible savings on 500 parts per million colloidal silver, the best pharmaceutical grade available, and all sizes on sale. Super Male Plex with Uhimbi and Super Femplex for summer toning. Buy glucosamine chondroitin 60 caps, summer sale priced at only $12. Colon Enhancer 250 caps, summer sale priced at just $18. And if your brain's a little foggy, we have a great supplement on sale called Memory Power. Log on and hit the postcard specials link for more super summer savings at herbalhealer.com. As always, new customers get a free catalog with first order. Herbal Healer Academy, healing the world with nature, one person at a time.
Before you throw away your used batteries, you need to listen to this. Now, going green can save money. Go green and save money by giving life to your used batteries by charging them with the Renaissance Charger. The Renaissance Charger uses a new revolutionary battery charging technology that effectively extends the life of new batteries and gives new life to used batteries. Invented by legendary audio genius John Bedini, this unique and patented charging system rejuvenates the electrochemical plate structure in the battery without additives, increasing capacity and maintaining cell integrity. Renaissance Charge offers a full line of products made in the USA for all types and sizes of batteries. Find out why our customers tell us the Renaissance Charger is the only battery charger they will ever use. Save your money. Save the environment. Visit us online at r-charge.com. That's r-charge.com, or call us at 208-772-4514. That's 208-772-4514. Be a part of the revolution today.
You can't argue with success. And many people have found great success in fighting back colds and flu viruses with Ali C, the world's best garlic extract. So now, it's time to get even more success with the other great quality natural products from Affinity Health Products. Like C Energy Liquid Vitamins, Lose and Snooze, and the One Day Diet. Or Human Growth Hormone Support, Menopause Specialist for Women, and Joint Specialist. See these and many other quality Affinity Health products for men and women online at affinityhealthproducts.com. That's AFFINITY healthproducts.com. Or call in your orders at 877-888-7126. That's 1-877-888-7126. Trust your health to the makers of Ali C, the world's best garlic extract. Affinity Health Products, the finest and most innovative natural health products available.
Are you tired of searching for great talk radio?
Something more important.
Search no more. We are the GCN Radio Network.
Hello, this is John Burroughs, one of the witnesses to the Rendlesham UFO incident. You're listening to the Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio.
We're back. Gene and Chris talking to David Kaiser, professor at MIT, author of, and let me give you the full name of the book here, How the Hippies Saved Physics, Science, Counterculture, and the Quantum Revival. And right now he's talking about this culture, this group of scientists who couldn't get a job because the bottom had fallen out, I guess, of the business. And we recall also people like Stanton Friedman, nuclear physicist. He reached a situation where he couldn't find employment except as a UFO investigator. So, David Kaiser, you could have become a UFO investigator. You didn't, though.
No, not this time around. Not in this life, anyway. But it's true that the folks I focus on for the book, they had to make a different way in the world. They couldn't just do what their teachers' generation had done in terms of the expected routine. You get your PhD from a good place, you get a good job, you do mainstream research. Through no fault of their own, this generation and members like this Berkeley group, they were really just caught off guard. And so what amazed me about the story is they found each other through different ways. They kind of bumbled along, and the roads led them to Berkeley. I always joke, if it's 1973 and you got time in your hands, might as well go to Berkeley. It was a great, amazing place to be, as I'm sure we'll talk about. And once they got there, through different ways, different things that brought them there, they pretty quickly found each other, and they found kind of like-minded people who were incredibly passionate about modern physics, about what it might imply, about where it might lead, who had seen those questions really kind of denigrated in their formal training. So they were trained to be extremely good with their calculations. They could sling the equations around with the best of them, but they hadn't been encouraged, and in fact their coursework had really discouraged any of the kind of philosophical, interpretive, what does it all mean kind of stuff, And that's what this group was really hungry for. And they figured they had time on their hands. They weren't punching the clock anymore. They found each other. They had this kind of shared interest, And so they formed this very informal but very kind of spirited group, the Fundamental Physics Group, and they met together every Friday afternoon, and they'd arrange for some speakers. They'd have kind of brainstorming sessions, and sometimes they would truck on down, bring the whole show down to the Esalen Institute in Big Sur, California, about 150 miles south of San Francisco, right on the coast, breathtakingly beautiful setting. And Esalen, as I'm sure you know, was famous even at the time for a kind of incubator of the New Age, right? All things New Age or occult, whether it was Eastern mysticism or psychedelic drugs or yoga, which once seemed very radical, vegetarianism, things that, some of which now seem actually pretty straightforward. And it turns out the single longest running seminar series in Esalen's history was actually on quantum mechanics and the nature of reality. These physicists that I wrote about were organizing every year for the better part of 2 decades. That was hot stuff at Esalen around the hot tubs and all the rest. So these folks were carving out a kind of parallel universe for themselves to pursue these questions that had really fallen out of favor or fallen out of the curriculum for mainstream physics.
So why don't you give us a sense of some of the early thinking that they bounced around with each other, and some of the early attempts at creating hypotheses and then doing the work that it would take to prove them and get published?
Sure. So, one of the things that really mesmerized the members of the group was Bell's theorem. We were just talking about a moment ago, this notion of quantum entanglement of particles that could be separated in space but still share this kind of instant connection. And they were among the earliest physicists anywhere in the world to take that seriously. They weren't the only ones, but they were, we might say, the early adopters. Go back and look at who published articles on Bell's theorem during the first 15 years after Bell's original publication, and they're dominated by members of this group. So not exclusive, but clearly, in the game early. And these folks were worried about entanglement, about non-locality, about how quantum theory violates our ordinary experience. But they also, some of them, were also curious about, would this help explain other kind of strange phenomena around them? And this is where I think it matters a great deal that they were sitting in the Bay Area in the 70s as a lot of stuff was getting attention and kind of in the air. And one topic was, for example, Uri Geller, the Israeli performer, who then began to claim that he had genuine psychic abilities. He was whisked to the United States for careful scientific study. One of the first places he went to or was brought to was in the Bay Area, the Stanford Research Institute, or SRI. It was a defense contractor laboratory that had only recently been spun off from Stanford University. So ordinarily they did, tests for the Pentagon or some private industry. And all of a sudden there was a group at SRI, again, sort of with time on their hands during this low point in the physics profession, and they began studying people like Geller, and in fact many other people, to see if they had, mind-reading abilities.
Did they actually come to any conclusions, positive or negative, about these alleged abilities? This is very important.
They did. They came to the conclusions. They didn't sway everyone who tried to listen to them, but they were convinced. These are physicists Hal Puthoff and Russell Targ, and in fact there's a whole group there at one point. They got articles into some of the most prestigious peer-reviewed journals on the planet, like the journal Nature, Proceedings of the IEEE, the Electrical Engineering Association, where they were conducting experimental tests, laboratory tests under what they considered carefully controlled conditions for people like Geller, and in fact, I say many others, names might not be well known today, of things like what we might casually call mind reading, telekinesis, these kinds of things. And so this was getting press not only in kind of the hip underground, counterculture scene, but also front page news at the time in the San Francisco Chronicle and other kind of mainstream newspapers. And so these physicists that I wrote about who were in Berkeley, some of them were reading about this stuff. They got incredibly excited. They began to wonder whether this mind reading or telepathy or ESP type stuff, maybe that was an instance. Maybe that could be explained by this weird quantum thing like non-locality or entanglement. So maybe they had some of them had an extra impetus to worry about the kind of grand meaning of quantum theory, because they thought it could account for even wider ranges of phenomena like these tests at SRI. They got really invested in that.
Well, at the time, phrases like counterfactual indefiniteness and non-locality, hidden states, these are really difficult subjects and terms to communicate to people, even people with extensive education. And these guys were they in their own sort of I think, unique way, let's put it, got involved in really trying to communicate these subjects. And one of the things that it's always struck me is, how SRI, Targ, and Puthoff got started. And, of course, the early experiments with Uri Geller and Pat Price, and then later Ingo Swann. You didn't mention this, but this then gradually kind of morphed into the whole remote viewing project that then actually raised quite a lot of eyebrows, especially in the intelligence community and in the military. And these guys seem to swirl around this whole sort of cauldron of creative thinking and ideas. One of the real, I think, leading figures in this whole physics group was, of course, Jack Sarfati, who is quite a character. He's still out there. For a scientist who supposedly is doing some pretty heavy-duty physics work, I don't know how the heck he has time to fire off several hundred emails every day. And I've unfortunately been the recipient of some rather strident emails from Jack. We'd like to get Jack on the show at some point, and he has surprisingly agreed to come on the show so we can dig into some of his war stories. But I mean, these guys are really, they were walking the walk and talking the talk. Several of them actually had jobs as like dishwashers and just, they did anything they could to get by. Why don't you describe some of these figures for us? Nick Herbert, of course, Sarfati. Why don't you give us a little thumbnail sketch on these guys? Because some of the photographs I've seen, they look like something out of Star Wars or
Yeah. I should say, so each of the people I wrote about, I guess almost all of them, are still alive. You mentioned Jack, Sarfati, Nick Herbert. The whole group, in fact, I think they're flourishing, and they were extremely generous with their time for me as I was working on the book. So I got to know them, at least pretty well.
Did you get a chance to, hang out with them, or is it mostly email and telephone?
A little bit. So I spent the better part of, a really fun day in San Francisco with Jack Sarfati and Fred Allen Wolf while working on the book. John Clauser had me over at his house for a really very lovely whole long day, and follow-up interviews often by telephone and email and all the rest. So these folks have really been very kind, and other physicists I write about as well, Wojciech Zurek at Los Alamos Laboratory and others who are not into the kind of counterculture scene but who play roles in the book, and they also were just extremely generous. So
we have David Kaiser, and the book is called How the Hippies Saved Physics. Well, they certainly did a lot of unusual things. We'll learn more about them. Chris O'Brien's the co-host. I'm Gene Steinberg. You're in
the Paracast.
So here's what happened. I was placing an order online. The site went down. It just stopped responding. It took hours before it returned, but I'd already placed the order with another company. If your site goes down, you could lose business. And if you have a business or personal site, you'll want to know it's easy to run and it will stay online. At iWeb, your site is hosted on one of the most reliable networks in the world. Check it out. iWeb.com. That's iWeb.com. For 58 years, Fate has provided true reports of the strange and unknown. Fate brings you the latest in all aspects of the paranormal, like angels and miracles, psychic phenomena, ghosts, UFOs, and much, much more. To receive your complimentary Fate magazine, call now at 1-800-728-2730 or visit their website at www.fatemag.com. That's 1-800-728-2730. What are you waiting for? Your fate awaits.
Local Army-Navy surplus stores are hard to find these days, but not military-issue supplies. They're right here online at mainmilitary.com. That's right, just like the state, M-A-I-N-E, military.com. We have everything for true total preparedness. Mainmilitary.com is not a typical website. It has much more than your old surplus store. Quality military-issue survival gear like canteens, mess kits, utensils, gas masks, filters, and chemical suits. Magnesium fire-starting tools, strike anywhere, waterproof, and storm matches. First aid kits, splints, tourniquets, parachute 550 cord, military manuals, sandbags by the bale, and a huge Molly assortment of vests and pouches for every need. Call 207-989-6783, 207-989-6783, or visit mainmilitary.com. That's M-A-I-N-E military.com, the main name in military supply.
OpticsPlanet.com is where discerning gun owners and outdoorsmen go to gear up. Optics Planet has the best selection of rifle scopes, red dots, night vision, holsters, bags, and tactical gear on the planet, with always low prices, free shipping on most orders, and expert customer service. Go to OpticsPlanet.com/GCN to get a free gift with purchase. That's OpticsPlanet.com/GCN or call 800-332-OPTICS, 800-332-6784.
Hi, this is Ted Anderson. Have you ever wondered why banks, stockbrokers, investment advisors won't talk about gold IRAs? They've been available since 1986, yet the financial industry won't recognize the value of gold for your retirement. Gold has outperformed paper investments, yet no word about IRAs. If you would like to have gold for your retirement, call 800-686-2237. Don't get left behind by rising inflation and low returns. Call 800-686-2237. Secure your future and call 1-800-686-2237.
Energy, energy, and more energy. We all need it. Get the energy you need quick through the powers of Wild Forest Extract. Wild chaga and birch bark are the secrets of the forest, used exclusively by Russian athletes. Wild chaga is the world's top source of superoxide dismutase, the critical enzyme that blocks the aging process. Chaga is good for your heart and even helps support healthy arteries. Wild birch extract is the top source of betulin, a natural sterol needed by every cell of the body. And healthy cells mean a healthy body and a more powerful you. No wonder it's known as a king of all herbs. Experience real energy and power like you've never dreamed possible. Take Chago Charge Tea with wild birch bark every day and Chaga Max capsules to get the energy you need. You deserve it. Order today by calling 877-817-9829. 877-817-9829. That's 877-817-9829. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. These products are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
The GCN Radio Network, providing the world with hard-hitting talk radio. GCN. Great talk radio starts here.
This is Hilly Rose, and I hope that you do listen to the Paracast because you will learn a great deal about the paranormal.
Chris O'Brien's the co-host. I'm Gene Steinberg. On the Paracast, David Kaiser, who's a professor at MIT, and is talking about a group of people who hung out together in San Francisco, the hippies, how the hippies saved physics. Now, the title, Saved Physics, is it because of the cutting-edge research they discussed? How did they save physics?
It is. I mean, I intended the title to be actually kind of playful, a bit ironic, kind of tongue-in-cheek, which is I don't think any small group of individuals, saved the entire discipline. So it's meant to be playful. Nonetheless, I mean, this group on the margins and really, as you said, down and out, some of them living hand to mouth, incredibly passionate about their work. And they really did, stir some pretty amazing developments. All the more amazing given their kind of, professional platform at the time. And so I don't think they saved all of physics, but they did a bunch of stuff that has had lasting value to this day. And when I started piecing those things together, I said, there's really a book here. And so we were starting to talk before, who are these characters? People like Nick Herbert and Jack Sarfati and Fred Allen Wolf might be names known to some of your listeners. Elizabeth Rauscher was at the time a graduate student, a young mom raising her son, was just able to go back to finish her PhD when her child was old enough, to go to kindergarten. Really, not easy times. And she was subject to really quite horrible gender discrimination. Very, very few women physics students, even as recently as the 1970s. And so she didn't have an easy time of it. Saul Paul Sarag, who's an amazing fellow. He was basically I honestly can't remember if he finished his undergraduate degree or not. He did not go on for graduate training, partly because he dropped out of Berkeley to go pursue theater. He was cast in the original Broadway production of Hair, if you can think back to that. Couldn't scrounge up the cash to meet the actor's equity fee, went back to Berkeley to study more physics. I mean, these are amazing people and pretty cool characters. And Saul Paul, through basically self-study, managed to publish several physics articles in, again, the most prestigious peer-reviewed journals in the land. So these people combined an amazing passion for quantum theory and its kind of weirdnesses with an interest in all the kind of buzzing, blooming, occult, New Age stuff that was getting especially a lot of play in San Francisco and the Bay Area in the 70s. And they were playful. They didn't take themselves too seriously at times, and it was just pretty amazing bunch.
Well, to have seminars at Esalen naked in hot tubs, that's just kind of wacky. Just listening to me say that. But one of the things that you really you spend a bit of time in the book talking about Nick Herbert and Jack Sarfati's attempt at faster-than-light communication. And this was fascinating to me because basically what they were trying to do is take the principles that Bell laid out in his theorem and take non-locality and actually utilize it as an approach to faster-than-light communication. Let's talk about that a little bit because it was an incredibly difficult process that they went through, and I know Nick Herbert spent years attempting to prove his hypothesis. And why don't you give us a kind of a thumbnail on that?
And maybe before you answer the question, David, consider the phrase that came out of Star Trek, subspace communications. Is that what it was about?
Subspace. I'm not sure what that would be, actually. I'm not sure.
That was the concept in the Star Trek universe. In the Star Trek universe in the 1960s, how did they communicate with people light years away? Well, of course, they didn't have to explain it. It was all subspace.
I see. Well, maybe that was the inspiration. I don't know. But it certainly is. It's equally strange. I mean, what these folks were up to or were after. And so, I mean, just to pause for a second and say, faster-than-light communication, what that really would imply, if one could make it work, would be receiving a message before it was sent. We're talking about all the causal paradoxes, all the kind of troubles with relativity that would imply. And so what certain members of this Berkeley group, especially at the time, Jack Sarfati and Nick Herbert, they were really intrigued by the possibility, which is to say, Bell's theorem, this incredibly beautiful result from quantum theory, not getting much attention yet, except from folks like the ones I write about. It seemed watertight. In fact, group member John Clauser had done the very first laboratory tests. It proved that this entanglement seemed to be a real thing. It wasn't just, flights of fancy. And it implied this instantaneous, faster-than-light connection between two particles. And that seems really to sit poorly with the other great pillar of modern physics, Einstein's relativity, which seems to put an absolute speed limit, an upper limit on how fast anything like information or force or anything else could travel. So here you have the great smackdown of modern physics, right? Is quantum theory going to be incompatible with relativity, or will there be some unusual and kind of hidden union between them? And that's the kind of thing that these folks were after, people like Nick Herbert and Jack Sarfati. And so they came up with increasingly really quite ingenious designs, so thought experiments for devices that maybe really could use quantum theory to basically violate relativity, to send messages before they could be, or I should say, to receive messages before they were sent, to go faster than light. And so you're right. In the book, I have a long chapter on the kind of cat and mouse game, as I think of it. The two of them would come up with would hammer out a cool idea. It would often get hashed out first in these informal group discussions by the fundamental physics group. They'd put them down on paper. Jack even filed patent disclosure forms at one point, thought he could maybe patent a device. Nick Herbert wrote up his own preprints and set them on their way. And then a small number of other physicists all around the world, some of them in the United States, some dotted throughout Western Europe, would get their hands on these kind of underground preprints. There were all kinds of interesting ways they were connected. And they would think hard about them, and some of them would find the loopholes. They'd find the sort of no-go theorem, why that actually would not be able to operate as claimed. And this went on for, as you said, for years. In fact, for increasingly ingenious patterns or plans, and then increasingly subtle reasons why they actually would fall. And with each of those, these were kind of revelations that had not been known before about the deep structure of quantum theory. Physicists were learning about things they didn't even know about in the effort to kind of debunk or poke holes in these cool designs. And so, and from that's partly where the saving physics in the title comes from. Out of that really quite playful, spirited back and forth came some absolutely critical insights into physics that are at the sort of page one of our textbooks today. They go by names like the no-cloning theorem, the no-signaling theorem, quantum limits on amplifiers. I mean, these are foundational results that are now at the bedrock of a multi-billion-dollar industry like quantum encryption, and they were discovered by the kind of constant, playful, smart prodding and hard thinking by people like Jack Sarfati and Nick Herbert, and then the handful of their kind of interlocutors, people like Wojciech Zurek and Bill Wooters and Dennis Deeks and others. Giancarlo Girardi. So there was this kind of really attenuated communication pattern between the kind of really hip, playful Berkeley group and a few other kind of increasingly mainstream physicists who were paying attention.
Cutting to the chase, David, is it possible to have what we call subspace communications or communications at faster than light speed so someone who's exploring another star system can call home and they get an answer right away, not 50 years from now?
When ET calls home. So, to the best of my knowledge, the answer is no. I think most physicists would say no. On the other hand, I'm not going to endorse these plans, but serious people, have given serious thought to, they continue to that question. And so it wouldn't surprise me if the effort to get even more wacky, cool ideas today would A, not work, but B, be sort of clarifying in the quest, much like it had happened before. And so quantum theory, as we now understand it, seems not to allow these things to happen. Is quantum theory the last word? There are all kinds of legitimate reasons to ask about extensions beyond quantum theory or, for that matter, relativity. So given what we know now, I think the answer really is no, we can't do it. Do I think that'll never, ever, ever be possible? That's a much harder bet to place.
Of course, I have to ask then about the logical connection, warp drive, hyperdrive, or as they used to say, engage. So can we engage warp drive? They're talking about that, aren't they?
Some of the folks are today. So, as for example, people like Jack Sarfati have been working very hard on sort of, we might call them exotic theories of space-time, or worrying about, or even does Einstein's general relativity allow for exotic states and so on. So again, it's not that I at least haven't seen a winning example yet, but that doesn't mean that they shouldn't be working on it. And that's I think the larger point of the book is that we need these people, we need all kinds of people to be pushing and pushing on the boundaries. What seems just maybe barely possible, because just in clarifying, even if it's impossible, we're going to learn something, and often we'll learn pretty surprising and amazing things.
But isn't that part of doing scientific research, that today something is impossible, but tomorrow we find a way to do it? That's the way it's always been, hasn't it?
That's exactly right. In fact, one of the favorite examples that these folks used to trot out even back in the day was that at one point John Wheeler, a very, very prominent, eminent physicist, who was in very frequent contact with the Berkeley group, at one point he called one of their ideas moonshine. And they thought that was great, because that's exactly the word that was used before World War II to explain, to dismiss the notion of what would become an atomic bomb. Nobel laureate nuclear physicist had said that's, uranium fission's just moonshine. And
I'll tell you what, we'll drink more moonshine or the Kool-Aid or whatever it is with David Kaiser. I'm Gene Steinberg. The co-host is Chris O'Brien. You're in
the Paracast.
Hi, this is Ted Anderson. If you'd like to listen to GCN programs on the go, I have great news. GCN has created a Droid and iPhone application, and it's free. Just as easy as going to GCNlive.com, click on the banner, and download. Before you know it, you'll be listening to your favorite hard-hitting GCN shows, live or on demand, right on your Droid or iPhone, 24/7 and on the go. So download the Droid and iPhone app free by clicking on the banner at GCNlive.com. Thanks again for listening to GCNlive.com. Again, that's GCNlive.com. We the people grow cotton, weave fabric, engrave ink, embed strips and fibers to protect from counterfeit, then carting to a private bank, having it lent back at interest, forcing taxes to service debt. This capitalism, or was Jefferson correct when stating a central bank issuing the public currency is a greater menace to the liberties of the people than a standing army? Ted Anderson, I'm placing a free silver dollar in a book that explains our monetary system. Call for your copy, 800-686-2237. It's time to understand the system. Call 800-686-2237. That's 800-686-2237.
Welcome back to the Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio. And now, here's Gene Steinberg.
We continue amazingly, even though it seems like only 30, 40 minutes have passed. We are in the second hour of the Paracast with David Kaiser. We're taking a quantum leap through time and space. The co-host is Chris O'Brien. I'm Gene Steinberg. You're in the Paracast. So looking here at what these hippies discovered, what were you doing, by the way? Parenthetically, what was David Kaiser doing in the 1970s?
Mostly watching Saturday morning cartoons. I was a pretty young kid. So, I joke in the book, I guess in the acknowledgments, I say my memories of the 70s are hazy, but not because they were clouded, by psychedelics, because I was, like a toddler. So I was slowly, trying to learn about the world, but in a different way than the folks I write about.
So I guess if you remember the 70s, you're either too young or had spent too much time in the 60s. An interesting little side note here is Jack Sarfati is going to be at the DARPA NASA Star Drive Symposium in October, and I believe he's going to be presenting some sort of paper addressing his concept of negative energy-powered starships. So he's still Mr. Outrageous. He's still out there pushing the envelope. So kind of keep your eyes open, listeners, for word on on his paper. And if we can get him on the show, he's agreed to get on. We'll maybe get into that a little bit. The whole concept of negative energy, to me, I mean, I guess your average New Ager would cringe thinking, oh, my God, negative energy powering the starship? So,
by the way, is that antimatter? Negative energy?
No, it's not. Okay. It's different.
We can't build dilithium crystals. On my arm. We can't build dilithium crystals. I'm so sad.
Metamaterials, Andrew says. I'm here with Andrew Palfreyman, who is a software engineer for many years at Cisco. He was one of those rare individuals that was actually accepted into Oxford University when he was 16. So he's a bright guy, and he's busy writing down up a couple of questions and comments as he's listening to us do the show here.
We should bring him on for a few minutes.
I'll see if I can twist his arm and get him on here. But he's been working for over 12 years with on the Woodward effect. Are you familiar with that at all, David? The Machian general relativity and Mayor Millis's BPR number one choice.
So I'm familiar with some of the work on Mach's principle and relativity and some efforts to explain the origin of inertia. I'm not familiar with the things you mentioned just now, though.
Yeah, it's what's Woodward's first name, Andrew? Yeah, James T. Woodward at Cal State Fullerton. Andrew's been working with him really closely for quite a number of years on. It's called frictionless propulsion, I think, propellantless propulsion. So maybe Woodward and Sarfati might compare notes at one time. Well, let's get back to our physics group, and we were talking about Nick Herbert's multi-year attempt, and with Sarfati's help and the physics group's help, to come up with a design for faster-than-light communication, which ultimately was shot down. Even though he did get a paper published, if I remember correctly, it was, as you alluded to, it was sort of proven to not be a workable hypothesis. What were some of the other early experiments that these guys were doing before we had, of course, the famous success of the Dow of Physics and the Dancing Woolly Masters from two of the members of the group? Why don't you kind of give us another sense of what some of the other areas that they were working in?
One device they actually really did build, Nick Herbert built with another friend and colleague, they called a metaphase typewriter. This, again, was just a marvelous example of the kind of playfulness built on some real, earnest, serious thinking. And it was a delight to learn about. So part of what really intrigued these members of the group was this question of consciousness. That's a lot of what they were after. And one question in particular was whether consciousness could have an effect on sort of steering quantum events. That's to say, and that goes back in some sense, at least inspired by some ideas, speculations by Nobel laureates like Eugene Wigner, which again, and John Wheeler, which had not really been getting much play in the mainstream physics world, but these folks really wrestled with them. They picked up on them. And the idea was, could human consciousness, or maybe any consciousness, kind of steer, could it alter the underlying probability distribution for seemingly random quantum events? And Wigner had ideas to suggest that maybe consciousness is what he would have said collapses the quantum wave function or plays some crucial role in quantum measurement. And that was, it's a legitimate thing to be asking about. And these folks were curious about that. And so Nick realized if it's really consciousness and not, say, brain chemistry in a physical, fleshy brain, then it needn't be restricted to the person sitting next to you. What if it could be spirits, from the other side and so on? So basically, these guys wired up a pretty cool device in the 1970s for a kind of 1870s, phenomenon to worry about spiritualism or getting using a kind of spirit medium to hear from spirits from beyond. So they did this, and they did it many times. And among my favorite examples They had a big party on the centennial of the birth of Harry Houdini, famous magician, and they wanted to see if Houdini's spirit could somehow, the consciousness could steer the kind of probabilities for quantum events, in particular if it's, say, like the radioactive decay of a thallium sample. So each decay should be a random event, but with an average half-life. And so the question was, could a consciousness like, say, the spirit of Harry Houdini start, sort of speeding up or slowing down, changing from the average likelihood of given radioactive decay? And if so, could that be used to sort of rat-tat-tat out like a Morse code message? So they hooked this detector, Geiger counter, up to a teletype machine. And they got a paper from the National Security Agency on the letter frequencies in the English language, how common is the letter E, how often does it appear with the letter D, and so on. And so they wanted to do it really very carefully and scientifically. And they wondered, could, when they hooked up this Geiger counter to the teletype, would they only get random noise, just jumbles of letters, or would there be intelligible messages in there? And they called that the metaphase typewriter. So that's an example among many where these folks were, as Nick, I think, later recalled, it was at the very least a good excuse for a really good party. And there was a way to celebrate Harry Houdini, think hard about quantum theory and consciousness, and have a good time. So they were, I think that captures the spirit of the group. This was not a throwaway. I mean, they were worried about alternative explanations for the measurement problem in quantum theory, which is remains a huge, big deal problem, even for mainstream physicists. And they wanted to sort of highlight just how weird the quantum universe really is, in a very playful, very evocative way.
Well, what did Houdini have to say?
Opinions differ. So Saul Paul Sarag, whom I mentioned earlier, wrote a really lovely kind of fictionalized account, a short story about the metaphase typewriter. It appeared in this magazine called Spit in the Ocean, which was at the time edited by Ken Casey, the Merry Pranksters. It was in a special issue edited by Timothy Leary. And so in Saul Paul's fictionalized account, they see this string of letters at the back that says basically, and in an infinite time, as if Harry Houdini was too frustrated. This was too slow a device to get his thoughts across. It's like when I try to text on my cell phone, it takes me an hour and a half. So I guess in the story, Houdini's spirit was saying this, I'd love to chat with you fellows, but this is going to take too long. That was fictionalized. However, some people who were there claim that there was a string of characters that was recognizable in the midst, again, of kind of random noise or a jumble of letters. And that was the letters that would spell out by Jung, B-Y-J-U-N-G. And some claim that was just as a lab tech was walking by with a copy of the portable Jung, in her pocket. So, some of them will say, look, you see. Others will say, monkeys on typewriters will type out Shakespeare. That's just a random fluctuation. But, at the very least, they were going to explore the foundations of quantum theory and, like I say, have a good time.
One question I have here, which is something we can explore as we continue with this episode, and we are going to have to do our break very shortly. The question I have here is, for regular, normal people, what technology did these people develop in the 70s that we could recognize today? I'm not talking necessarily about quantum entanglements, but things that people could buy in the store. Anything?
Well, sure. And one technology was the popular book. I mean, some of these, the best-selling books of that generation were written by members of that group, like the Tao of Physics that I mentioned, like the Dancing Woolley Masters by Gary Zukav. Jack Sarfati and Fred Allen Wolf wrote one with their friend Bob Tobin. They really helped jumpstart the whole genre called Space, Time, and Beyond. And in fact, there were, about a dozen of these books that came out. So that's one way that they were getting the message out literally into the hands of soon to be, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people.
I'll tell you what, I'm going to ask you more to flesh that out in our next segment with David Kaiser. The co-host is Chris O'Brien. I'm Gene Steinberg. You're in
the Paracast.
Have you been sitting on a few great domain name ideas but haven't locked them in for yourself? Good. Now you can buy them through the #1 domain name registrar, Namecheap.com, as voted by the top tech blog Lifehacker. Just like the name says, you can buy domains cheap, as low as $2.99, and every new domain comes with WhoisGuard, our special privacy service, free for the first year. Now that you know, it's time to grab those domain names before someone else does. Namecheap.com. Go now. Namecheap.com.
Fate magazine provides true reports of the strange and
and unknown. Keep up with the latest on angels and miracles, psychic phenomena, ghosts, UFOs, life after death, and much, much more. To receive your free issue of Fate magazine, call now at 1-800-728-2730 or visit their website at www.fatemag.com. That's 1-800-728-2730. What are you waiting for? Your fate awaits.
Again, the Congressional Budget Office sounds the alarm. This time warns of Greek-style U.S. debt crises. You heard me right. The GAO is drawing a parallel between the U.S. economy, its debt, and the current Greek economic meltdown. With the debt-to-GDP chart climbing into unfamiliar territory, the growing budget deficit will rise to unsupportable levels. Hi, this is Ted Anderson. The Federal Debt and Risk of Financial Crises document the CBO has published is a must-read for every American, covering the risk of continued deficit spending coupled with an aging population and the rising interest rates spell economic disaster. It's imperative that you get a copy of this document and study it for yourself. Call me today at 800-686-2237 and I'll send you a free copy. Again, call 800-686-2237 and ask for your copy of the CBO document. Once again, you need to read this government report. Call 800-686-2237.
The American people think they live in a constitutional republic, land of the free, home of the brave. Right. Just try those lines on the judge when you get a ticket or have to deal with a big bad IRS. Instead, use escapeharassment.com. Since 1972, our volunteer group of researchers and educators have successfully taught how to escape tickets by law, and it works. Escape Harassment has 3 different steps to follow, depending on where you are in the ticket process. Learn how to escape tickets, IRS, or court proceedings before you go to court. For free, 3-minute pre-recorded information and FAQs, call this toll-free number, 1-877-457-9009. That's 877-457-9009. Or go to escapeharassment.com and see our money-back guarantee. That's escapeharassment.com. Remember, escape harassment works. The food storage industry leader has done it again. Introducing FDG Clubs and Survival Bucks from the Freeze Dry Guy. For over 39 years, the Freeze Dry Guy has served various government agencies and the private sector with the finest in storable foods and emergency rations. If you've wanted to build emergency food supplies but couldn't afford it, now you can. Go to freezedryguy.com, click on products, and look for the Freeze Dry Guy Clubs to pay as you go. Now you can build food storage without going into debt. Choose from a payment range of $95 to $450 per month. Our clubs work with everyone's budget. Plus, when you join Freeze Dry Guy Clubs, you'll get additional rewards. For example, this month, get 10% back in Survival Bucks on all purchases in the Freeze Dry Guy product line, plus free shipping within the lower 48 states on any order amount. Hurry, go to freezedryguy.com or call 866-404-3663. That's freezedryguy.com or call 866-404-3663. The Freeze Dry Guy, the best you can buy.
America's #1 source for independent talk radio for over a decade. We are the GCN Radio Network.
We want to hear from you. If you have a comment or question about the Paracast, send it to news@theparacast.com. That's news@theparacast.com. And if you want to catch up on past episodes, we have hundreds of shows for you to download direct from theparacast.com. That's theparacast.com. Or check us out on iTunes.
We have David Kaiser, and he's a professor over at MIT. We're talking about those wacky physicists, hippie-type people from the 70s with Gene and Chris and the Paracast. So the other part of the question is, of course, they came out with books, best-selling books. What about consumer electronics, other products that we could buy in the stores? Anything they developed from all this research?
None that I know of. The main one, like I said, that I trace in the book is helping to lay the theoretical groundwork for these very fancy devices today, like quantum encryption. But those are the ones that I know of. I remember most of these members of the group were theoretical physicists. They worked with some laser physicists like Hal Puthoff and Russell Targ. But for the most part, they were theorists who worried about the kind of structure of the equations and what it might mean about the universe. And so their thoughts were going more to the, we might say, ethereal realm, you know.
Well, I have a question here. Now, we're talking about their influence and possible developments that were inspired by these guys. And you mentioned that perhaps the premier quantum mechanics researcher is Anton Zeilinger, who's an Austrian physicist. To what extent do you think modern cutting-edge physicists were influenced by these guys? And do we see some sort of influence now in the modern physics world? Did they help loosen up the field a little bit, get people thinking more creatively, or what is their legacy really now in modern physics?
So I think in the narrow, sort of tight focus, they do have a legacy in these very specific results that I mentioned before, like the no cloning theorem and no signaling and quantum limits to amplifiers. And those are technical developments that really are kind of bedrock for a whole flourishing field today. And again, it's not that the folks I read about uniquely found those things, but they really had a major hand in pushing that whole program forward, and often designing the devices in the debunking of which these insights would appear. So they were clearly there, and those I think are they're incredibly important developments that we just didn't know about before these folks got in the game. And then if we zoom out a little bit, these folks were the early adopters on Bell's theorem more broadly. I mean, they were the ones who said long before this was at all common for physicists to even pay any attention to, that quantum entanglement is baffling and probably really, really important. They, as I write in the book, they rescued that topic from a decade of obscurity. They forced it onto the agenda for at least a few other physicists in addition to their own. And so they helped kind of get it back into the mainstream or get a few people really excited about it. And then if we zoom out further, they wrote those books like I mentioned. They really inspired a whole genre of popular physics writing and getting a lot of this stuff out into the public, some of which, in fact, this really surprised me actually, some of which got used in formal physics classes in the classroom as a kind of proxy textbook before the regular old textbooks caught up with the new stuff about quantum theory like Bell's theorem. Books like the ones we mentioned written by these folks, or formal lesson plans that were published inspired by those books, by physicists who were talking with them pretty regularly, they had a kind of a direct pedagogical impact in the classroom that was important in the era before these sort of slow-moving textbooks could catch up. So we can sort of zoom out from a tight focus to get broader and broader. And again, it's not like these folks single-handedly changed the world. I don't think any small group ever does. But they were really having an impact. They have a legacy that if we know where to look for it, we can start seeing some of that signs of it even today.
Now, one of the topics often discussed when we talk about the word quantum is quantum computing. Now, is this such a thing possible? We're all living in the world of ones and zeros, the digital world. Is this really the next stage of computing?
I have a feeling it really is. It's not the area of physics that I work in directly. I have a number of colleagues who do. They're really smart, and they make a good case. And I think there is some. I mean, there are working prototypes of sort of low capacity compared to anyone's laptop on their desktop right now on their desk. But these things are taking advantage of this fundamental quantum property, things like superposition or indeed entanglement in Bell's theorem, that are being, literally wired in from the start. And these folks can keep these things, they have to put them in cryogenic coolers, they have to treat them with great nimbleness so far. But nonetheless, they've built a few of these things as well as worked out incredibly complicated and sophisticated, theoretical descriptions.
It's not something that I can buy at the Apple Store next year.
Not yet. No, it's not. It's not going to be in the iPhone 5.
Are these things practical? Do we see that 5-10 years from now, if we can figure how to get a handle on it and we don't have to live in cryogenic laboratories and stuff, that we can take this stuff and actually use it in products for space exploration and then ultimately the consumer world?
That's definitely the intention. And so again, I'm not an expert on the nitty-gritty of it these days, but I know that's certainly what's driving a lot of this excitement. Whether it's going to be 10 years from now or 20 or 50, I think it's certainly, odds are good it's going to be coming.
Well, what direction is quantum physics going in right now? What are the exciting papers that are being published, and what's the buzz going around the field right now?
I think there's a lot. I mean, by now, quantum physics is central to virtually everything that physicists want to work on. So there are different aspects of quantum theory, or it shows up as relevant in different ways. So whether it's nanotechnology, which is basically pushing single atoms around, that's clearly deeply involved in quantum theory, which was the subject for which quantum theory was first designed, for understanding single atoms or just a small number of atoms. So the entire, humongous elephant in the room of nanotech is basically putting quantum theory to work in one way. And you can go from there all the way to the opposite scale and look at quantum cosmology, closer to an area I actually work in physics. The excitement about string theory or trying to quantize general relativity, the excitement about the universe, the multiverse, are we one bubble among an infinitude? Those are all making, taking advantage of weird properties of quantum theory sort of in a different direction. So I think pretty much anywhere you look these days, quantum theory is going to be incredibly central, and its sort of inherent wackiness is coming to light.
Well, we know in ufology, for instance, we do cover that subject quite extensively on our show. One of the things that you occasionally will hear is someone that does not buy in lock, stock, and barrel into an extraterrestrial hypothesis for what's behind the UFO phenomenon, and you hear buzzwords like that they're multidimensional. Is based on our knowledge right now, which is probably in a dimensional sense pretty limited, but do you think that there's a possibility that we may be visited by the denizens of some other dimension? Is that a possibility, you as a scientist?
I wouldn't discount it as a possibility. I also wouldn't rate it as a very high possibility, but that's just could very well be my own limited imagination or knowledge. So we could unpack that. Think about doing like a Drake equation for the version you just described. What's the likelihood that the universe that we live in has extra spatial dimensions? The likelihood of that is actually, I would say, better reasons to believe that now than even 20 or 30 years ago. So that's a pretty big change, or at least better reasons to worry about it, to think about it. It has very specific motivations that put it on the table now. And so if that increases the overall likelihood for the rest of your scenario, that's sort of how the science it seems to me, would go along. And more importantly, if there are ways to get experimental observational input on, are there extra dimensions, how are they characterized? And, people are hoping they might catch some glimpse, it's a long shot, maybe catch a glimpse of something like that in the Large Hadron Collider that's now spinning up in CERN, or maybe by a different sort of mechanism might affect the very subtle bumps and wiggles in the cosmic microwave background radiation. I mean, that's a kind of cutting-edge research question to, are there extra dimensions, and if so, how do we understand them? And then what else might they imply? What do they open up?
No, do you think that this is one of the more exciting periods?
Chris, I got you the break. Dimensionally speaking, we have David Kaiser. Chris O'Brien's the co-host. I'm Gene Steinberg. You're in
the Paracast.
Ray Perkins, a reclusive veteran burned out from the Gulf War, lives tortured by relentless, perplexing nightmares. Nightmares of a horrific battle in deep space and of a mysterious woman suffering in agony for her devastated world. A woman not yet born, calling across centuries to him. Then, a coincidence leads him to his destiny, his chance to alter the universe. Attack of the Rockoids. The former fiction editor for Star Wars and Indiana Jones, Robert Simpson, writes, "The soul of the novel Attack of the Rockoids lies in its heart and passion for building a convincing tale of a love that spans the galaxy. A thrilling story. Attack of the Rockoids is available now. Read a sample chapter and get a special discount off of the cover price at our website, rockoids.com. That's ROCKOIDS.com. Attack of the Rockoids, a novel in the grand science fiction tradition."
Hey, Brian, if you could do just one thing today to ensure your family's food security, what would it be?
That's easy, Bill. I'd head straight to soupbeansurvival.com.
Soupbeansurvival.com?
I know, Bill, it sounds crazy, but this ancient secret has been around for over 8,000 years, and it truly is nature's super survival food.
Really, Brian? The number one survival food? Well, certainly the forgotten survival food.
Absolutely, Bill. The folks at soupbeansurvival.com scoured our planet to find the very best heirloom seeds to truly find nature's super survival food.
Brian, these aren't grocery store beans, are they?
No way, Bill. You're not going to find these beans in any grocery store. These are the absolute highest quality beans in the world. Visit soupbeansurvival.com. That's soupbeansurvival.com for all the information you're going to need for nature's super survival food.
Big Berkey water filters are in high demand. Storable foods are also in high demand. BigBerkeyWaterFilters.com has always kept our focus on the Berkey water filter products. But increasingly, our customers have been asking asking for storable foods. After months of research, BigBerkeyWaterFilters.com now offers great-tasting, long-lasting, storable foods. These ready-to-eat meals are packed in airtight nitrogen pouches. All you do is just add water. And because they're sealed so well, they come with a 25-year shelf life. Combine our Berkey water filters, which are powerful enough to purify treated, untreated, or even stagnant pond water with our storable foods, and you have a winning combination. Remember, we offer free shipping on every order over $50, and GCN listeners receive 5% off all ceramic filter systems. Visit BigBerkeyWaterFilters.com or call 877-99-BERKEY. That's BigBerkeyWaterFilters.com or call 877-99-BERKEY today.
You know that drinking pure, high-alkaline water is one of the most important factors in maintaining high energy and vibrant health, and most experts agree that the water you drink should be at a pH level of 8 or higher. AlkaVision Plasma pH Drops, available only at alkavision.com, combine a unique formula of most alkaline minerals available. AlkaVision Plasma pH Drops alkalize your water, ridding the body of harmful toxins and acid, helping you to regain your energy and health. Alkalizing your water by simply adding 10 drops of AlkaVision Plasma pH Drops helps the body to rid itself of acidic waste, increases oxygen, and raises the pH of your body to optimal levels. And bacteria and viruses cannot survive in an alkaline high pH environment. Order your bottle of AlkaVision Plasma pH Drops for only $29.95 at alkavision.com. That's ALKA Vision.com or call 269-409-1776. 269-409-1776. Alkalize your body. Supercharge your health at alkavision.com.
Are you tired of searching for great talk radio?
Something more important.
Search no more. We are the GCN Radio Network.
Hi, this is Don Ecker, and you are tuned into the Paracast. Let me tell you what, you're going to hear stuff here that you probably won't hear anywhere else. Hear that, George Snorri?
We're back with David Kaiser talking about, I guess, cutting-edge physics, quantum mechanics, all that stuff, that way out there stuff. With David Kaiser, I'm Gene Steinberg. The co-host is Chris O'Brien. Chris, before we did our break, you had started a question.
Well, I've just been seeing so much in the news lately. Spokespeople like Michio Kaku is such a good writer, and there are other writers that, similar to the books in the early 70s that came out. In fact, that's where I first learned about quantum physics. It was in the Tao of Physics and the Dancing Woolly Masters. And there were several other books as well. People like Michio Kaku now, I think, they're so accessible, and they're elegantly able to relay such mind-boggling information to lay people. I get a sense that quantum physics is in a real up period right now. How would you rate this time period now in terms of excitement in the field?
I definitely agree, and I agree both about the talented writers now, like Michio Kaku, like Brian Greene, in fact, like lots of people. I think they are really good at that. And even when they're not trying to necessarily write engaging books for non-specialists, in their own offices, I think you're right. It is an exciting time. One of my colleagues at MIT is Max Tegmark, and I think he'd share that sort of wild, giddy enthusiasm, or Seth Lloyd, or all these folks. And I think it's partly for the reason I said before. I mean, when we go to the hyper small to the mind-bogglingly large, in each direction we're getting sort of new insights into quantum theory. It's leading to new questions, and often to some really very fancy new experiments as well. So the subtitle for my book was The Quantum Revival. And I think that was really meant to say there's an exciting thing going on now, and I think a lot of physicists will feel that.
Let me ask you a question that kind of arises from that. We're looking at all this cutting-edge science. How does organized religion handle all these developments, or can they?
Well, I don't know. I mean, to be honest, it's not the area of my expertise. I think there might be different responses from different, traditions and religious communities. One thing I will say, like, take us off track, one thing that was interesting to me was seeing the rise of a kind of anti-Big Bang fervor from some corners of a kind of creationist or intelligent design science. So some folks seemed not very comfortable or very happy with the picture we have of a Big Bang inflationary cosmology, the sort of mainstream view of how the universe began. And so some of the folks who would otherwise be spending a lot of time critiquing, Darwinian natural selection in biology classrooms, some of them have turned their sights onto the Big Bang. So that's one example. It's certainly not the only example of, kind of religion or spirituality encountering these questions. Just to say that it's going to be a mixed bag, and I don't know, who's giving the most serious thought to that. I haven't been. It's not where I would really be an expert.
Was the impact to religion anything that they thought about when all those hippie scientists were getting together all those years ago?
I see. Well, some more than others. So people like Fritjof Capra, I think, were really earnestly, genuinely interested in sort of the Eastern worldview, a very religious, spiritual worldview, Hinduism, Buddhism, Confucianism, and that whole Taoism and all the rest. And so Fritjof became a kind of devoted student of that. He was reading everything he could. He'd go to all the seminars in the Bay Area he could, and even when he left the Bay Area. So for some people, yes, I think religion, or at least some kind of spirituality, was absolutely central to that ongoing, evolving set of questions. I'm not sure it played the same role or had the same impact even for all members just of that tiny group, let alone for other folks, at the time. So for some of them, yeah, you can definitely see that was an important feature.
Okay, so looking further at the impact, what about the fact that our space program has been cut down in a large way, especially at the end of the shuttle program? Does that hurt this kind of research?
I don't know if it'll hurt in a direct way. I think it might hurt more in the sense of who's asking the big, weird, out there questions and who's going to be inspired by amazing things. I don't think there was much of a budget spillover, at least none that I know of. I don't think we cash it out nickels and dimes from one appropriation line to another. But I think, the larger question of what's our place in the universe, what does it all mean, I think a lot of people for decades have found, deep, deep inspiration from the space program. And so we want to look at those, we might say, second order effects, where there we might indeed see an impact.
Now, what is your personal opinion about this? Do you think they went about it all wrong in cutting back on the space program? You kind of think that the promise that was realized with the moon landing in 1969, it was never really followed up in a huge way.
It's a tough one. As a kid, I was completely enamored of the space program, and my walls were covered. My friends would have had, like rock star posters up, and I always had, astronaut and space shuttle posters up. So, I grew up with that stuff. I built model rockets, and I'm going to try to get my kids into that now. And so, I was definitely a kind of space junkie. And so it is pretty sad for me just personally to realize that, the last shuttle launch is now passed and so on. On the other hand, who knows? Maybe some other, exciting, cool thing will start to take its place. And so, when I put my historian's cap back on, even at the height of the Apollo program, there was a lot of concern in this country about budget priorities, not unlike today. Cities were crumbling, horrible, challenges, and a lot of critics, even back then, said, there has to be some kind of cost-benefit trade-off, and I can at least sympathize with those concerns. There's a limit to what we can try to do. We hear about these limits all the time these days, financially, economically in this country. So it's tricky. I mean, what do we do to accomplish great things, to inspire just absolute, euphoria in people, which I think is incredibly important for asking big questions, keeping people excited. But, we don't have unlimited resources. So, that's your wishy-washy answer to say, I wish we could do more. I can understand why there are limits.
Another question here is, can we relate any of this research to the sources for new forms of energy? Running out of oil, high price of oil, looking at all the alternatives, electric cars, whatever. Is there anything in physics that we could look to, maybe an unlimited source of energy, free energy, whatever?
Well, so that's an idea where it does get kicked around, I would say, sort of on the margins still. I'm not convinced of that. I'm not going to say that's definitely right or wrong, but I think most mainstream physicists are not, convinced by that. But again, that doesn't mean people shouldn't necessarily, keep pushing on it. So people often will. There are all kinds of, terms and jargon that will get, passed around in that. And again, I'll just say that I haven't seen enough yet to be convinced, but that could be my fault and not the fault of the folks, working on it.
Now, looking at the crazy quilt stuff that we deal with on the Paracast, obviously you covered some of that with the investigations at universities of people who claim to have various extrasensory powers. Now, if E.T. is out there 50 light years from here, does he or she or it have to spend 50 years getting here? How do they come here, or do you think they have come here?
Well, that's a great question. So the first response would be to say they would probably take a lot more than 50 years because they probably couldn't travel even close to the actual speed of light. So if they're 50 light years away, it would take 50 years if they were, because as you know, if they're traveling at the speed of light, if we believe Einstein's relativity, they couldn't even get that speed. So we're looking at decades. And then on the other hand, you can ask about space-time is really a pretty weird, fun thing to think about. And so if you take Einstein's general relativity seriously, could there be wormholes? Could there be non-trivial structures? Could there be topologies in space and time that we just aren't aware of yet that could be like the ultimate shortcut? And, lots of people, lots of straight-laced university professors have thought about that very hard, let alone other folks who find it inspiring and wacky and who might be more on the margins. So, again, I wouldn't say no, it could never, ever, ever be shown because, look, people like Stephen Hawking worry about closed time-like paths. People like Kip Thorne at Caltech have done incredibly sophisticated studies of exotic structures in Einstein's relativity and wormholes and all the rest. So, that's, again, I'd say that's a fair question. And one that, even if the answer ultimately still turns out to be no, we're going to learn a lot in the process.
We have David Kaiser learning a lot in the process. This is your science school where we're trying to look at cutting-edge science in a way that we can all relate to it. We have a co-host, Chris O'Brien. I'm Gene Steinberg. You're in
the Paracast.
Graphic Converter is the image manipulation tool for the rest of us. It does not use any database. You get full control of all your files. Want to view the images of a folder? Drag it into Graphic Converter, and a powerful browser opens up to show your image files. You could use it for slideshows. You could use it to import images from digital cameras or from scanners. Need to do some image editing? You can do that too in Graphic Converter. Also print catalogs. Convert from so many formats I can't even list them. Download now to see if Graphic Converter is good for you, like 1.5 million other users. Guess what? You could save money when you buy Graphic Converter. Use the coupon code Night Owl. Use the coupon code Night Owl to get a special price for Graphic Converter. Go to lemkesoft.com. That's Lemke soft.com. Lemkesoft.com. Lemke soft.com.
If you owe the IRS money you can't pay, then listen carefully, because you already know that the problem won't go away by itself. You can get help today from the leading tax expert in the country, Dan Pilla.
Hi, I'm Dan Pilla. The IRS isn't going to just forget about you. Right now, the IRS is hiring thousands of tax collectors to go after delinquent accounts just like yours. That's why you need to take action today, and I can help. I take a simple but proven approach to solving your tax debt problem. First, I stabilize collections so you don't have to worry about wage and bank levies. Next, I build a detailed plan to get your debt reduced to the fullest extent possible, sometimes even eliminated. Finally, I work with you every step of the way to get your problem solved once and for all. So call now for a free consultation. Call 1-800-346-6829.
Dan Pilla will solve your tax problem, guaranteed. He's helped thousands of people, and he can help you too. Call us today at 800-346-6829. That's 800-34-NO-TAX.
If you drive for a living, you don't get paid to stop or wait in line. Keep your wheels moving with pre-pass. Bypass way stations. Fly by port of entry facilities. Stay moving at highway speed while the guy without pre-pass waits in line. Save time, save money. Call 888-401-PASS to try pre-pass free. That's 888-401-PASS.
Hi, I'm Mark Craighead, founder of Crossbreed Holsters. I designed our top-selling holster, the Super Tuck Deluxe, to solve the problems of being poked, pinched, and gouged while carrying concealed. The Super Tuck Deluxe is the most comfortable, most concealable holster on the market today. We offer a 2-week free trial and a lifetime warranty.
Visit us at crossbreedholsters.com. Don't forget, crossbreedholsters.com. Heart and Body Extract continues to receive positive testimonials from people who have experienced amazing results, like Reed.
I just wanted to send you a quick but a very big thank you for Heart and Body Extract. I've been on the formula for nearly a month now, and the improvement in the circulation of my legs has been simply amazing.
Reed was facing a tough choice.
I was facing surgery due to the severity of the 100% blocked arteries in both my legs. And my decision, waiting for surgery, to say no and try Heart and Body Extract instead, has been thankfully the right decision.
And the result?
I can now walk up steps without noticeable pain.
Order Heart and Body Extract at 866-295-5305, 866-295-5305, or hbextract.com. Heart and Body Extract for a long and healthy life.
The GCN Radio Network, providing the world with hard-hitting talk radio. GCN. Great talk radio starts here.
Hi, this is nuclear physicist lecturer Stanton Friedman. You are listening to the Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio.
We continue with David Kaiser discussing cutting-edge science with Gene and Chris on the Paracast. We're trying to keep up with him, okay? Because I didn't go to MIT. I didn't pretend to go at MIT. I've read the science literature, but, we're trying to keep it at a sensible level. Okay, David Kaiser, the other question is, we're involved in all these things that impact space and time. So, can we travel to the future? Can we travel to the past? Can we take that quantum leap, as they say on the TV show?
Well, look, we can certainly travel to the future, which is just by sitting still and letting the clock tick by. Could we make a great leap toward the future? Then it gets more tricky, and likewise for the past. So, again, I'd say the mainstream consensus seems to be no, or at least not yet. And yet, relativity continues to surprise us. And so I wouldn't want to say never, ever, never under those circumstances. I'd say I haven't seen it yet. And that, again, could just as much be my own limited imagination. But, general relativity, even canonical, even just Einstein's version of relativity, has all kinds of amazing features. And there's a flourishing kind of industry of scientists working on extensions beyond Einstein's relativity, where even more sort of exotic or unexpected things could be possible, at least in theory. So I haven't seen the great proof yet, but very smart and earnest people are working on it all the time. At least I'm trying to understand that on a theoretical level, even if maybe not building their own time machines just yet.
We were talking about some of the current buzzwords and aspects of quantum physics that are now currently being bantered about. Back in the early 90s, I seem to recall there was a bit of a flurry of interest in cold fusion. I haven't heard anything about that recently. Is this a dead area of inquiry or study, or where are we in that process?
Well, again, I'm no expert in what's going on most recently. I do know it's not dead in the sense that there are still people working on it. In fact, there's a sociologist of science who coined it the undead science. It's like a zombie that actually seems not to die. And some people at least are. I thought that was a good description. And again, I'm not going to cast aspersions on those who are doing it now. I'm not following it. I do know the numbers following it now, I think have dwindled even from the heyday that you described, but it's not zero. And so, some people are convinced there's still something there.
How about building machines based on dark matter? I've been seeing some buzzing lately that there's some question of whether dark matter is even real. Obviously, theoretically, I know Hal Puthoff was very interested in it. I know Sarfati's been very interested in it, and others. But What is this current, this new development in there where now the whole concept is being questioned?
Well, so I'm not sure the specifics that you're referring to. I do know in general, there have been a lot of efforts. Dark matter is so troubling, right, to most astrophysicists because it's like, who ordered that? We don't want that stuff, right? It means that, again, as I'm sure you listeners know, it means that on the order of a quarter, about roughly 25% of the energy balance of the entire universe is stuff that we don't have any idea what it is, and we've never detected it. We can't smell it. We can't catch it in our laboratory. At least we haven't yet, despite some very good tries. And we have no clear idea of what it might be. Lots of competing hypotheses. And so it would be great if there were no need for dark matter at all, if it was just one grand mistake. But that's pretty hard, too. I mean, again, I won't discount every effort, but we think we understand Einstein's relativity really, really well, from lots of angles, with lots of sensitive tests. And if Einstein's relativity is to hold, then it seems, to my understanding, we really do need this mysterious missing matter, this dark matter, to make sense of the behavior of galaxies, the way they rotate, the way they behave gravitationally. And so it could be that Einstein's relativity is just wrong, and there's some other theory we don't know yet. That's always possible, right? And maybe that would get away from the need for dark matter. If the gravitational interaction itself would give the same result without this mysterious stuff. But I think that would be fairly called a long shot. Not impossible, but a long shot. And if galaxies are behaving the way we think they are, the way we think we understand they should, then I think we're largely stuck with this missing, this mystery of what is this stuff. And so before we can build machines out of it, let's detect some first. Let's catch them in the lab. Yeah.
And then you can play with it. First, you got to prove, kind of figure out what exactly it is, because that's a heck of a lot of. I mean, the universe is pretty big place, and 25% of it just still being an unknown is that must perplex a lot of people. Here's another one. Now, Andrew kind of mentioned this one to me before. He was wondering if the Higgs boson particle is not found at the Large Hadron Collider, what happens to the standard model?
Would you define that for our listeners, because their eyes are just glazed over?
Yeah. Fair enough. So a couple things there. The Higgs boson, I guess some of your listeners might know, it's often in the news these days. It's so far still hypothetical particle. No one's had definitive, observational measurements of it yet, despite lots of trying. We're still trying now. So it's a hypothetical particle that really is central to our understanding of the basic forces between parts of atoms, between subatomic particles. It's one of the main mechanisms that actually gives rise to mass, as to why do we see an electron has a certain mass instead of having no mass at all. And so it's sort of conceptually, it seems to literally hold the whole picture together. It's the only particle from that entire what's called the standard model, from our understanding of the basic forces of nature, that has never been seen. Every other piece of that standard model by now has been seen. We can, capture them in our labs. We can mess around with them, measure them carefully, build stuff out of them in many cases. And the one missing component, the one piece that we just have never, ever seen directly is this Higgs particle. So if it is not there at all, then you can play the usual game, saying, well, it must be in some different, must have a different mass than we thought, or must lie outside the range. We need a bigger atom smasher. But you can only do that so far, because then other things start becoming, inconsistent. And so you can't play the game too much more. Otherwise, you could say maybe there just is no Higgs particle, and it's kind of back to the drawing board in that case. So that's both exciting because we'll have lots more to do and apply for grants. But that would be a real big. I think the word shock would not be inappropriate. That would be a big deal if there just honestly is no Higgs. We've been thinking about this thing and drawing conclusions about what properties it must have since the early '60s. And if it really isn't there 50 years later, that's going to be a big deal.
Yeah, that's a big deal. Yeah. Well, I've been reading some rather alarmist blogs and articles about people really being in a place of fear about what's going on at CERN. And, you hear things bannered about like, oh, they're going to create a wormhole or they're going to create something that's going to eat the Earth. And, there's a lot of alarmism out there. And do you think that kind of thinking somehow relates to the fact that science has leapt ahead so far away from the common, your average Joe out there. Joe Sixpack is sitting there, watching the news. And do you think that there's a really increasing gap between the ivory towers of science and the average person? And do you think that this somehow can relate to what appears to be a real upsurge in interest in the last couple of decades in areas of in subjects that most scientists just roll their eyes, whether it's all these ghost shows and UFO shows and this interest in more magical, mystical things? Do you think that that's a direct result of this increasing gap between cutting edge science, quantum theory, and just these wonderful leaps ahead that we're doing in terms of our scientific knowledge? Do you think that there's a relation there?
It's interesting. I bet there is. I bet there's other things going on, in the mix as well. But I wouldn't discount it. I think you're right, and I certainly agree that this sort of increasing gap between what sort of most people can be expected to know or understand about science and the kind of cutting edge. I think that gap is getting pretty wide. And I think there's also, there's since the kind of late 60s, or certainly say the Watergate era, in this country, there's been a lot less inclination to just believe what the experts are telling you, no matter who the experts are. And so I think there's a change in a kind of political culture or maybe a media culture. So it's not only we don't understand that stuff, but, who are you to tell me what I shouldn't even worry about? And I can understand that has something behind it. Just having fancy letters after your name doesn't mean you know everything. And we've been surprised all the time before. So there can be a kind of concern. Are the experts not telling us stuff? Might not be what can I say? That might not be a real cause for concern. There might not be vast conspiracies of evil scientists behind the curtain, but I can understand why people might be worried. Do we know everything we need to know? They tell me not to worry, but we've heard that before.
I'll tell you what, we have to do this break. We have David Kaiser. The book is called How the Hippies Saved Physics, Science, Counterculture, and the Quantum Revival. The co-host is Chris O'Brien. I'm Gene Steinberg. You're in
the Paracast.
Hi, Ted Anderson announcing a great way to listen to radio on the telephone. By calling 760-569-7700, you'll be hearing GCNlive.com programs in seconds. Come to GCNlive.com, find your favorite host's dedicated phone number, and hear them 24/7. You heard me right. Every show has a dedicated phone number. Stop by GCNlive.com and bookmark their number today. And again, that's 760-569-7700. Hi, this is Ted Anderson. Have you ever wondered why banks, stockbrokers, investment advisors won't talk about gold IRAs? They've been available since 1986, yet the financial industry won't recognize the value of gold for your retirement. Gold has outperformed paper investments, yet no word about IRAs. If you would like to have gold for your retirement, call 800-686-2237. Don't get left behind by rising inflation and low returns. Call 800-686-2237. Secure your future and call 1-800-686-2237.
Welcome back to the Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio. And now, here's Gene Steinberg.
This takes us to the final four of the Paracast. David Kaiser, our guest. I'm Gene. Chris O'Brien's with me. You're in the Paracast. I'm going to ask you kind of a far-reaching question here, which may or may not relate to everything. This renewed emphasis in some quarters of the political spectrum on what we didn't consider science, such as creationism, other things. Is there an anti-science movement going on trying to conserve what we knew before and forget about what we know now and what we hope to know in the future?
Gosh, I hope not, Gene.
Yeah, I hope not. I think there are I think we can find tendencies like that. I'm not sure it's so much to sort of keep us from discovering new things. My understanding, I don't think that's what's driving it. I think it's, I think it's politics like most politics. If people don't like a particular outcome or policy, then there could be efforts to use that to decide what's legitimate to study or to get funding for and all the rest. And I think we saw a lot of that. I mean, real sort of obvious bare partisanship around science. Quite frankly, in the earlier years of the 20th century in the United States, And I think independent of one's politics, I think we can all agree there was a lot of political meddling in a way that we maybe hadn't been accustomed to seeing in quite so extreme ways in earlier times. So yeah, I think as I mentioned before, I have some modest interest in following this kind of intelligent design or creationism stuff, partly just because it sometimes it impacts ideas about cosmology or there's a kind of pushback around what I consider actually really very well-established ideas, and other people say, that's just your opinion, and you have no right to teach our children, and all that kind of thing. And so, that's still around. It'll be interesting to see, how that settles out in the coming years.
One can't help but be reminded of Pat Robertson's rather disturbing comment about 10 years ago, where he said that UFO believers should be stoned, that the heavens are for God, the firmament is for man, yet he bounces the 700 Club off satellites all over the world.
Yes, right. That's right.
I guess you want your cake and you want to eat it too in that regard. Where are we going now? I mean, what sort of breakthroughs I know you have your own area of expertise in cosmology. Do you see anything on the near horizon that might be some just amazing breakthrough? Are there any areas that are particularly exciting right now in science?
Well, I think there are a lot of areas that are really exciting. And, in my own little universe, so to speak, my own little domain, I think cosmology is in just an amazing place right now. When I was starting out as a student not all that long ago, we could basically say with confidence that certain basic parameters of our universe were known to within a factor of 2, often to within a factor of 10. That's not very precise, right? And now a lot of the same parameters are known to better than 1% accuracy. I mean, they say better than 99% accuracy. The residual errors are incredibly small. And that's happened in the space of 10 or 20 years. And that has ruled out certain ideas, that has honed others, that's pushed new ideas to the forefront, and that's only sort of still building up steam. There are new satellites and incredible instruments being launched and designed all the time. So in that sense, I think cosmology is a growth area. I think it's incredibly exciting. We have these stubborn questions like dark matter, like dark energy, like all the exotic notions from Einstein's relativity we still haven't fully explored. And so there's plenty of room for really fun and intriguing stuff in cosmology, and that's just one area. I think lots of people would have similar excitement, around, say, nanotech or certainly quantum computing or all kinds of areas within the physical sciences.
Well, we have a new telescope going up, which I'm sure is real exciting for you and your work, the James Webb Telescope, which will be kind of the next generation Hubble. What do cosmologists and astrophysicists, what are they expecting to be able to determine that's new and exciting with this incredible leap forward in spaceborne technology?
So a lot of time with these satellites, you're worrying about increasing resolution on the sky. How finely can you distinguish between objects? And that's partly why the Hubble was such an amazing leap forward, to be able to see things that simply had not been seeable before. And the latest versions, like you say, should do that, better by factors of 10 or 20 or 100. Same thing with these more cosmologically oriented satellites. There's a Planck satellite, named for Max Planck, the quantum revolutionary. That's already in orbit. It's not sort of reporting data yet, but it's taking data. And that, again, would do for understanding the very earliest moments of our universe about, 10 to 30 times better than the best we have today. And that's where you start being able to really say, is this how the universe began or is that? And you can really start distinguishing, instead of just saying, well, all our ideas are compatible with what we can know because we have fuzzed out data. You really get down to the nitty-gritty and you start getting surprises.
Well, also, there's a possibility of actually optically being able to see extrasolar planets as well. Well, that's
right. So extrasolar, astronomy, the exoplanet stuff is incredible and getting more so all the time. That's, certainly aided by each of these leaps in technology. As well as, peering, these things are your ultimate time machines. These are things that are peering back in time of almost 14 billion years ago, and we can still take like a Polaroid. We can take a snapshot of this baby universe and puzzle over it. That's pretty amazing. So
we're not going to be able to see all the way back to the Big Bang, obviously, but we're going to get pretty close, I would think, within probably less than a billion years, if memory serves me correct. And again, I am no scientist. Listeners, do not try this at home.
Right. In fact, we'll get back to roughly 400,000 years after the Big Bang, which is, say, about 13.7 billion years ago. It's a long time, 13.3 or so, yeah.
The big concern here is, of course, how all this cutting-edge research is being treated, especially now where we've reached the point here where, once again, science isn't getting the grants they used to get. We're so busy cutting spending, we don't think about the practical effect.
Well, that's true, and it is worrying. There was, there are budget battles all the time. Our most recent budget battles have been more severe, of course, than average. And every now and then there are efforts to cut whole wings out of the National Science Foundation, just close them down, for example. And so far, at least, those battles have been more heat than light, and they were, I think, a lot of kind of political jockeying, but maybe not quite as serious a threat as it seemed, but who knows? And these days the congressional battles are just getting, quite frankly, more more difficult to understand. I'll put it that way, and just more and more uncertain. So yeah, I think it is a kind of a difficult time now, where cycle by cycle, if there'll even be the foundation to apply for your grant, let alone will you get your grant, but will there even be the edifice there? And again, so far it's made it through previous battles, but it's serious stuff.
In your particular case here, and obviously you're teaching the new generation of the scientists, the ones who will maybe figure out whether we can get a handle on time travel, on unlimited power, space travel, all this stuff. Do you find your classes getting bigger, smaller? What kind of things are they interested in?
They're pretty big, and I think they've gotten pretty big, and that's exciting. And these are incredibly gifted, passionate students who have a lot more energy than I do. So that's a good thing. And so I think, for example, MIT graduated more physics majors this year than we have in something like 30 or more years. So that's clearly the trend is growing. Yeah, it was.
That's excellent. That's good news.
Yep. Absolutely, I thought so.
Well, what are these kids? Are they jazzed by anything in particular right now, or is it just go discipline by discipline? I suppose. I know there's a lot of interest in, places like India and China are producing just amazing amounts of very, very talented scientists. I mean, obviously this country has, had a lead in just all these ingenious scientists that you can point to in the past. Are we going to be losing our lead in the scientific disciplines because of the increased educational levels of these other countries? Do you think we're falling behind further and further, or are we holding our own? It sounds like there may be some hope for this country. And I think I mentioned on a prior show I was taking some measurements to put a grill on a wall grating, and this 22-year-old kid, high school graduate, I asked him to write down some numbers for me, and I said 33 3/4, and he said, what do you mean 3/4? And I said, well, it's 0.75, and he goes, well, what do you mean? How do you write that? And I just, I literally almost fell off the ladder. I just could not believe that this high school graduate, 20-something-year-old kid, didn't know what a fraction was. It just boggled my mind.
It's not unusual. I've heard some of this too. Yeah, let's do the break. David Kaiser joins us. Chris O'Brien's the co-host. I'm Gene Steinberg. You're in
the Paracast.
You expect professional service from your doctor, your accountant, and even the girl who takes your morning coffee order. Why not from your domain registrar, too? Namecheap.com provides stellar service with no sneaky upselling. We offer more features and security options for your website than there are ways to order a latte. And new domains come with WhoisGuard to protect your personal info. At Namecheap.com, you can get your domain for as low as $2.99. Now is a great time to get to know Namecheap.com.
For 58 years, Fate has provided true reports of the strange and unknown. Fate brings you the latest in all aspects of the paranormal, like angels and miracles, psychic phenomena, ghosts, UFOs, and much, much more. To receive your complimentary Fate magazine, call now at 1-800-728-2730 or visit their website at www.fatemag.com. That's 1-800-728-2730. What are you waiting for? Your fate awaits.
When making important financial decisions, you should always know the facts. That's why Midas Resources is willing to pay you to read the facts. Midas Resources, a team of hand-picked financial specialists with decades of financial experience who are ready to provide you with state-of-the-art, up-to-date financial services. Midas Resources offers a host of services and stands behind their products. In fact, if you call and order their free Midas report, Midas Resources will pay you.
This detailed report will provide you with financial history on the safest and most profitable areas to invest in. If you read the report, Midas Resources will send you a free Walking Liberty silver $50. So what are you waiting for? Get the facts and call Midas Resources toll free at 888-292-2709. That's 888-292-2709. And remember, if you read the Midas report, you'll receive a free Walking Liberty silver $50.
The food storage industry leader has done it again. Introducing FDG Clubs and Survival Bucks from the Freeze Dry Guy. For over 39 years, the Freeze Dry Guy has served various government agencies and the private sector with the finest in storable foods and emergency rations. If you've wanted to build emergency food supplies but couldn't afford it, now you can. Go to freezedryguy.com, click on products, and look for the Freeze Dry Guy Clubs to pay as you go. Now you can build food storage without going into debt. Choose from a payment range of $95 to $450 per month. Our clubs work with everyone's budget. Plus, when you join Freeze Dry Guy Clubs, you'll get additional rewards. For example, this month, get 10% back in survival bucks on all purchases in the Freeze Dry Guy product line, plus free shipping within the lower 48 states on any order amount. Hurry, go to freezedryguy.com or call 866-404-3663. That's freezedryguy.com or call 866-404-3663. The Freeze Dry Guy, the best you can buy. We all know that Berkey Water Purification Systems are the most trusted name in water filtration. As an authorized Berkey dealer for over 6 years and serving thousands of satisfied customers, the Berkey Guy offers amazing specials for Berkey Water Filtration Systems. The Berkey Light Systems include a set of self-sterilizing and recleanable black purification elements that purify water by removing chlorine, pathogenic bacteria, cysts, and parasites to non-detectable levels and remove harmful chemicals such as herbicides and pesticides. Order the Berkey Light System today, complete with 2 black Berkey elements for only $231, and the Berkey Guy will ship your order free of charge. With the purchase of a Berkey Light, the Berkey Guy is also offering a set of fluoride and arsenic filters for only $39.99. That's over 30% off the retail price. Call the Berkey Guy at 1-877-886-3653. That's 1-877-886-3653. Or order online at goberkey.com. That's goberkey.com today.
America's #1 source for independent talk radio for over a decade. We are the GCN Radio Network.
We want to hear from you. If you have a comment or question about the Paracast, send it to news@theparacast.com. That's news@theparacast.com. And don't forget to visit our famous Paracast community forums at forum.theparacast.com. Get in on all the action at forum.theparacast.com.
So consider that. Riddle me this. Is our knowledge of the basics of science, math, are we depending so much on the computers, the calculators, that we've lost some of our abilities? David Kaiser, I put that question to you.
You know, like most things, I think it's a mixed bag. I know many of my colleagues at MIT have worried very, very strongly about that, especially, say, in physics or in mathematics. Are students losing a kind of feel, a kind of intuition for the equations or for a order of magnitude? You know, if you're not doing a lot of hands-on stuff, do you if it's all just on a computer screen, do you have the same feel for it? And, I've heard pretty convincing counter-arguments that the computers, can open up so many more things, enable these students to do in 10 minutes what a PhD would have had to spend a month doing before. So, like all things, I think it has the pros and cons. Certainly, it is the case that a lot of these students are such computer wizards in a very powerful, productive way that they can just, I used to joke that, I have almost no programming skills at all, so I just hire, an 18-year-old to do it in 10 minutes. It would take me a semester to figure it out. So certainly there's a great amount of skill and real enthusiasm there that I think is a great good thing. Is that at the cost of, other ways or older ways of engaging with the material? Maybe, but I'm not sure it's a net loss. Maybe it's just different.
So we're still holding our own out there in the world with all these, I think, China is graduating. I forget what the figure was. I think twice as many scientists basically than we are. Don't quote me on that one, but I remember reading an article and seeing the figure and just being like aghast that it seems like this country is slowly falling behind. But like you said, you've seen a real upsurge in interest in class sizes and bright kids coming up. So maybe there's hope. or are we going to continue falling further behind?
Well, I think there is hope, and the numbers game is only part of it. What do those numbers represent? And again, there are very, very world-class universities and scientists in China, for example, now training great people. But when you hear these numbers like 400,000 new graduates this year or that year, it takes a little more effort to sort of unpack what's the nature of that training, what are they doing with those skills. Just handing out degrees, or just counting degrees, I should say, should be sort of the start of that discussion. And quite frankly, a lot of times I think that becomes the end of the discussion instead. And it actually harkens back to similar debates we had in this country during the Cold War, where this was the Soviet Union graduating more physicists or engineers than we were, and if so, was that going to mean Armageddon? The numbers can become pretty political, and I think there's other questions, or additional questions to be asking as well. So that's where, I don't get quite as nervous. There are other indicators that certainly, obviously, the potential, the raw talent in places like China for science is growing rapidly. Look at the number of highly cited articles in the literature; those things are growing very rapidly. So yeah, there are ways to say things are changing. I don't think we're out of the count just yet.
We have to look also about what we need to do in the future to encourage this kind of research. Maybe cover more about what these guys are doing today in terms of their cutting-edge developments.
What are these guys up to now? We kind of talked a little bit about Jack Sarfati and I think Nick Herbert, but how about the other members of your fun fundamentalist physics group characters?
Sure. They've traveled lots of different roads, and so where they went from Berkeley was as sort of revealing to me, as interesting as what brought them there. So some of them have remained in sort of mainstream physics. So Henry Stapp has been a senior staff scientist this whole time at the Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory. Very well-respected kind of mainstream scientist with broad interests, and he's not afraid to ask uncomfortable questions about quantum theory and consciousness. But, he's had a paying job, and he publishes in the right journals. He has a solid reputation within the field. John Clauser, the experimental physicist who did that very first laboratory test of Bell's theorem back in 1972, he also has done, extremely well in terms of reputation. He just won this prestigious prize last year called the Wolf Prize in physics. He shared it with Anton Zeilinger and Alain Aspect from Paris, and that's often seen as a kind of, one step shy of the Nobel Prize, and really amazing, and I'd say very well-deserved recognition. On the other hand, he's never had a regular sort of academic position in physics his whole time. To this day, he runs a very sophisticated laboratory out of his garage, and he's able to get research funding grants from National Institutes of Health, for example, to do medical imaging. He's gotten patents, and he's a brilliant guy. He's incredibly productive, but he's had to make his own way. Others still survive mostly or flourish on sort of private donations. I always joke that they're like Galileo in the Renaissance, like the de Medicis will pay them. They'll have their very wealthy, generous patrons. They'll do their work, and it'll be on someone else's dime. And that sort of private patronage model has worked for some of these folks for a long time. And others became best-selling authors. They were able to live off their kind of royalties from the books that allowed them to keep these other flames going, keep the torch alive. And so certainly Fritjof Capra, has been, I think, the most successful as an author of this group. He followed up the success of the Tao of Physics with a series of other books. He's still writing, he's still active, and I think some of those books became so wildly successful that commercially that he was in a safe spot. And Fred Alan Wolf and Nick Herbert have also been able to basically stay afloat or more so, largely on the basis of their writing. And a few others became entrepreneurs. They started their own consulting companies. One of the founders of the group, George Weissman, actually began an import company for Tibetan herbal remedies for a while, that kind of thing. So they've been creative in other directions.
Yeah, brain tea.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we all need some brain tea. Hey, that's an interesting question there about cutting-edge science. One of the things we're looking at are some ways to enhance our memory, and not just to deal with Alzheimer's or stuff like that, but enhance our memory, kind of make the gray matter more functional. Some people say we use only 10% of our brain power now. There was a movie out called Limitless where Bradley Cooper plays this character that he takes this injection and suddenly he's using 100% of his brain power. So is that real?
I don't know, but if it is, I'd like to know where to get some. It sounds like the new
Me too.
Planet of the Apes movie as well might be pretty similar in its premise, at least.
That's all about trying to deal with Alzheimer's, and a scientist tested on the ape, and that's the wrong thing to do. Because the ape is played by Andy Serkis, who, of course, is known as Gollum in Lord of the Rings. It really is. He was the performance artist who actually created the first ape.
Oh, interesting. Well, how about Cowboys and Aliens? Have you seen that yet, Gene or David?
I haven't. I saw the preview only, and it looked like fun, but I haven't seen it.
It's interesting. Andrew pointed out to me that if you kind of take an equation from what we consider to be the time period between the Big Bang and now, that some of the earliest planets, suns, solar systems, have had about 9 billion years to get smart and to develop advanced spacefaring technology. Well, now he's saying no. Here, why don't you say it?
Okay, so the universe is... Hi, everybody. The universe is 13.7 billion years old, give or take. We now know that the earliest stars started to shine a fraction of a billion years after the Bang, about 360 million, I think it was. David would know for sure. It took us as Homo sapiens sapiens about 4 billion years to get smart from zero. And so you put it all together with the age of the universe, you could say that the oldest smart civilization that we could envisage would be about 9 billion years old. And that's quite an interesting number if you're interested in UFOs and that sort of thing, is it not?
In a sense that would be enough of a time to sort of get here and back or something like that?
Or to, I don't know, totally manipulate entire galaxies. Who knows the level of technology that you could develop in that amount of time. I think Michio Kaku came up with a rating system of sophistication and ability to, I guess, impact their reality. And
we'll go into the rating system and the reality. David Kaiser joins us. Chris O'Brien's the co-host. I'm Gene Steinberg. You're in
the Paracast.
Graphic Converter is the image manipulation tool for the rest of us. It does not use any database. You get full control of all your files. Want to view the images of a folder? Drag it into Graphic Converter, and a powerful browser opens up to show your image files. You could use it for slideshows. You could use it to import images from digital cameras or from scanners. Need to do some image editing? You can do that too in Graphic Converter. Also print catalogs. Convert from so many formats I can't even list them. Download now to see if Graphic Converter is good for you, like 1.5 million other users. Guess what? You could save money when you buy Graphic Converter. Use the coupon code Night Owl. Use the coupon code Night Owl to get a special price for Graphic Converter. Go to lemkesoft.com. That's Lemke soft.com. Lemkesoft.com. Lemke soft.com.
Attention gardeners, this is an urgent GCN self-reliance update. GCN has just discovered a new bioactive superfood for garden plants, flowers, and herbs. It's called ProtoGrow, and it's so effective at producing rapid plant growth that it seems to almost force plants to grow like crazy under practically any soil and light conditions. Now, here's the best part for our listeners who garden for self-reliance. ProtoGrow's unique blend of C nutrients maximizes mineral uptake and dramatically increases bloom set, creating maximum plant growth in minimum time. ProtoGrow works by providing geometric keys, which have the capacity to actually unlock the genetic code for nutritional uptake in plants. ProtoGrow's full-spectrum plant fertility means fruits and vegetables with extraordinary taste and up to 10 times the nutritional value. And if you want to double or triple the potency of herbs or wheatgrass, you can. If you want to grow nutritionalized superfoods with non-hybrids, it's now easy. GCN listeners who want to grow dirt-cheap superfoods should visit the ProtoGrow website at growlikecrazy.com. That's www.growlikecrazy.com or call 877-327-0365. That's 877-327-0365.
If you drive for a living, you don't get paid to stop or wait in line. Keep your wheels moving with pre-pass. Bypass way stations, fly-by port of entry facilities. Stay moving at highway speed while the guy without pre-pass waits in line. Save time, save money. Call 888-401-PASS to try pre-pass free. That's 888-401-PASS.
Hi, I'm Mark Craighead, founder of Crossbreed Holsters. I designed our top-selling holster, the Super Tuck Deluxe, to solve the problems of being poked, pinched, and gouged while carrying concealed. The Super Tuck Deluxe is the most comfortable, most concealable holster on the market today. We offer a 2-week free trial and a lifetime warranty.
Visit us at crossbreedholsters.com. Don't forget, crossbreedholsters.com.
You know that drinking pure, high alkaline water is one of the most important factors in maintaining high energy and vibrant health, and most experts agree that the water you drink should be at a pH level of 8 or higher. AlkaVision Plasma pH Drops, available only at alkavision.com, combine a unique formula of most alkaline minerals available. AlkaVision Plasma pH Drops alkalize your water, ridding the body of harmful toxins and acid, helping you to regain your energy and health. Alkalizing your water by simply adding 10 drops of AlkaVision Plasma pH Drops helps the body to rid itself of acidic waste, increases oxygen, and raises the pH of your body to optimal levels. And bacteria and viruses cannot survive in an alkaline high pH environment. Order your bottle of AlkaVision Plasma pH Drops for only $29.95 at alkavision.com. That's ALKA vision.com, or call 269-409-1776. 269-409-1776. Alkalize your body. Supercharge your health at alkavision.com.
Are you tired of searching for great talk radio?
Something more important.
Search no more. We are the GCN Radio Network.
Hi, this is Ted Phillips, listening to the Paracast, and it's as good as it gets, believe me.
We continue with David Kaiser. Last two segments exploring cutting edges of science and what all those hippies did. I'm Gene Steinberg. The co-host is Chris O'Brien. So the question here, could we have today a group of 2011 hippies who maybe even now are trying to figure out what science will be like for the next 50 years?
I think we could. And, I end the book in the epilogue by saying I think there's a wider safety net this time around than in the 70s for people, for ideas that are just a little bit further from mainstream. There are whole institutes, they're kind of brick and mortar institutes that are devoted to ideas like the foundations of quantum theory, quantum cosmology, and all the rest. There are also sort of internet-based funding agencies, for lack of a better word, so they're not even face-to-face, but there are private donations that can be parceled out. There's a group called FQXI, the Fundamental Questions Institute, and they give grants, basically, modest-sized grants to people, some of whom are university professors, others of whom are independent scholars, is the kind of euphemism for folks on their own. And there's a way to get that stuff, to keep the people asking the questions, to make sure they're not really kind of lost, and also, of course, in the internet age, to get the stuff to circulate. So a lot of garbage can circulate on the internet. There's no way to stop that, but it's not impossible to get ideas circulating and bouncing off other folks and interacting there too. So I think there is room for groups like the one I wrote about these days, and they might not be quite as have quite as hard a time of it, quite frankly. Getting resources, getting the word out, meeting up, even if only in cyberspace, with like-minded folks. And so, I think there's I think that continues.
Andrew has a question here. Hold on.
Yeah, there's been a recent paper. I wanted you to comment on it, if you possibly could, on the fundamentals of quantum mechanics. And please excuse me, I cannot remember the full names of the authors, but there's a Stephanie X, very attractive young lady from Australia, I think it is, and a chap from Cambridge, again, whose name I don't remember. And the title of the paper is something like Non-Locality and Quantum Uncertainty. And essentially, they found a very deep connection. This was published only in the last 3 to 6 months on Archive. Whether it will make it to PhysRevD, let us or something, I don't know, but it was called Non-Locality and Quantum Uncertainty, relating non-locality to Heisenberg's uncertainty. It's a very deep result, which seems to have been well received. I wonder if you would comment on it. Do you think it's pushed the field of understanding the roots of quantum mechanics further forward for us, if you're familiar with it?
Well, unfortunately, I don't know this paper in particular, so I can't say either way. But it's certainly an example of this notion that there are now lots and lots of people all over the world who are, concerned, as members of this group that I write about were concerned in the past, with the sort of deep structure, the deep foundations of quantum theory. And nowadays, one can get those papers published more readily. They can circulate pretty easily. So I don't know this particular one, but it's an example of that kind of activity that really has a kind of foothold back at the table again. It's no longer kind of laughed out of court as an activity,
Yeah, it almost sounds like we're getting to a point where we're starting to see unification of theories that tend to be almost like we're reweaving the strands of the rope, and we're starting to really get closer to some fundamental science at the core, the connecting point between a lot of these questions. And, just the whole idea of the CERN project and the Large Hadron Collider and the success that they've had, I think now they're going to go up to full power, if I'm not mistaken. In about a year. Any ideas of what we could expect from a full power test and colliding particles at CERN?
Well, so again, one is certainly to be hoped for is really definitive evidence, if it's to be had, for this Higgs boson, what we talked about before. This one sort of missing character, one central but yet as yet unseen piece of the puzzle in how matter holds together, so-called, yes. So that is, I'd say, a pretty likely to be hoped for development. And then, all kinds of things. So it could be there are reasons to suspect that one might be able to catch real evidence for extra dimensions through exotic ways that particles would behave, momenta would be measured, and so on in these exotic interactions. So all of a sudden, the LHC it's a long shot, but it's not impossible, could be telling us about the most basic structure of space-time, even beyond the sort of little particles that dance around within it. Or in an exciting but maybe a little bit more mundane way, it could hopefully be finding candidates for this dark matter stuff, particles of the sort we've never seen before, perhaps because we never were looking at the right energy scale until we're able to now, or signs for other kind of exotic symmetries or notions about what governs these subatomic forces that have so far really only been hypothesized, and there's been no solid evidence really either way often for decades. And so a lot of people are excited, saying no matter what we find, it'll be new, it'll be beyond what we already know, and a lot of them could be very very loaded pointers. They could say it's really this road and not the other one for moving forward.
In every era that we study science, we kind of think we've got it pretty well under control now. We know kind of what's going on with the universe, and then 50 years later, they seem like a bunch of Neanderthals. We find out that every
go that
piece
far,
of
Gene, but
pardon?
Maybe Homo sapien, not without the sapien. Man,
Whatever.
the wise, the wiser.
The point being that we all tend to think that we have a handle on what's happening in science, and then we find something else that shows, hey, we barely knew what was going on. So do you think there's a point where we could ever know all that there is to know? It's kind of a simplistic question, but one that people do ask.
And I think the answer is no, and I think for the reason you were saying before. I think you're right, that we have been, I would say, surprised and maybe humbled. Maybe we haven't been humbled enough given what we should have been. Like you say, time and time again. You don't have to go back all that far. So it's not only that we find out we were sort of wrong about something we deeply believed and dearly held, but that most of what we were worried about becomes irrelevant. It's not neither right nor wrong so much as the wrong question to be asking. It's that kind of upheaval that really does happen. It happens every few decades, if not centuries, that kind of scale at the very least. And, on the one hand, that's incredibly exciting. On the other hand, you say, well, what are we worrying about so deeply now that might turn out to be a non-problem? Not that we'll solve it. It just won't even be a problem anymore when seen from the vantage point of some new later set of ideas. So, yeah, it's, I wouldn't want to be the one saying, we've got it. We're done. I don't think that was ever going to be a winning position.
That reminds me of the head of the U.S. Patent Office in the late 1890s, and the famous quote that everything that can be invented has been invented. So,
I always wondered about the 6,000 patents that Apple and some other companies just bought because they were newly invented. But I won't get into the situation here whether patents are being granted for trivial inventions or such broad-based inventions that, of course, anybody is in violation. That gets to be almost ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
But, let's go back, since we mentioned Einstein. And now a lot of people looking to go beyond Einstein, and maybe he says, yeah, of course, the speed of light is supposedly the maximum, but we can find tricks around that. So after all these years, how good was Einstein's vision?
Well, I'd say it was awfully good. And so Einstein, it turns out, was human. He was wrong a lot of the time, like every other human ever has been. And I don't think that's a great fault of his to have to admit that. On the other hand, just about a century later, or really, coming up on a century since general relativity, well over a century since special relativity, coming up on a century in quantum theory. I mean, we're still living in many ways in Einstein's world, and we still think about things largely in ways that he had encouraged or taught us to. And there aren't many other people for whom we can say that. That's an amazing accomplishment. We've been able to find things in his ideas that he hadn't even anticipated, but that the structure, the fabric was there, and it's led us to discover even new things that were kind of latent. And he wasn't right about every last thing. No one is, but what he gave us has been well worth it. It's been an astonishing picture, and I think actually a very exciting one.
So much to learn, so little time. David Kaiser's our guest. Chris O'Brien's the co-host. I'm Gene Steinberg. You're in
the Paracast.
So here's what happened. I was placing an order online. The site went down. It just stopped responding. It took hours before it returned, but I had already placed the order with another company. If your site goes down, you could lose business. And if you have a business or personal site, you'll want to know it's easy to run and it will stay online. At iWeb, your site is hosted on one of the most reliable networks in the world. Check it out. iWeb.com. That's iWeb.com. For 58 years, Fate has provided true reports of the strange and unknown. Fate brings you the latest in all aspects of the paranormal, like angels and miracles, psychic phenomena, ghosts, UFOs, and much, much more. To receive your complimentary Fate magazine, call now at 1-800-728-2730 or visit their website at www.fatemag.com. That's 1-800-728-2730. What are you waiting for? Your fate awaits.
Big Berkey water filters are in high demand. Storable foods are also in high demand. BigBerkeyWaterFilters.com has always kept our focus on the Berkey water filter products, but increasingly, our customers have been asking for storable foods. After months of research, BigBerkeyWaterFilters.com now offers great-tasting, long-lasting, storable foods. These ready-to-eat meals are packed in airtight nitrogen pouches. All you do is just add water, and because they're sealed so well, they come with a 25-year shelf life. Combine our Berkey water filters, which are powerful enough to purify treated, untreated, or even stagnant pond water with our storable foods, and you have a winning combination. Remember, we offer free shipping on every order over $50, and GCN listeners receive 5% off all ceramic filter systems. Visit BigBerkeyWaterFilters.com or call 877-99-BERKEY. That's BigBerkeyWaterFilters.com or call 877-99-BERKEY today.
Congratulations to our friends at eFoodsDirect.com. In August, they celebrate 30 years in the long-term storable food business. To celebrate, eFoodsDirect.com is offering the lowest price ever on their one-year Freedom Food Supply, even less than the price in 1981. For a limited time, you get 30% off a one-year Freedom Supply, which provides 3 hearty meals per day for one adult. The Freedom Supply includes a large variety of fruits and vegetables, dairy, legumes, grains, sprouting seeds, and more. Plus, you get a generous supply of their quick fix meals. This is the most complete, extensive, and affordable unit they have ever offered. Call 800-409-5633 or go to eFoodsDirect.com/Alex and get 30% off a one-year food supply. If you have ever considered getting a supply, now is the time. Call 800-409-5633. That's 800-409-5633 or eFoodsDirect.com/Alex.
Fight back this cold and flu season with the world's best garlic extract, Ali C. Why Ali C? Because it helps your body fight viruses, bacteria, and fungi. Ali C has been scientifically proven in double-blind studies using low doses to greatly reduce the number, severity, and duration of common colds. Ali C contains 300 milligrams of stabilized allicin, the active ingredient in crushed garlic. Studies show Ali C is effective against MRSA, bacterial, fungal, and viral infections. One tablet of Ali C has the equivalent of 40 cloves of garlic. Ali C supports your body's resistance to all types of conditions and can help lower high blood pressure and high cholesterol. So boost your body's resistance to infection with nature's best garlic extract, Ali C. For more information and to order Ali C, call 877-888-7126 or go to garlichealthproducts.com. That's 1-877-888-7126 or go to garlichealthproducts.com for your Ali C today.
The GCN Radio Network, providing the world with hard-hitting talk radio. GCN. Great talk radio starts here.
Hi, my name is Richard Dolan. You're listening to the Paracast.
We're back. One more session with David Kaiser. I'm Gene Steinberg. The co-host is Chris O'Brien. Chris, is your friend have any more questions?
Yeah, Andrew.
David, I think there's a sort of a paradigm that's rather a bit meta about physics. Is physics fashion? By that I mean this. If you really widen it out to extra dimensions found by the LHC, if you say that I have something that's even deeper than Emmy-Noether's symmetry theorem, which says that for every conservation law there's a corresponding symmetry principle, an absolutely fundamentally deep thing to say about the universe. Somebody comes along next week and says, well, I can actually go deeper than Emmy-Noether and say something much more fundamental than that, which sort of like undercuts what we call the fundamentals and goes even deeper and sets out a substrate upon which a lot more things can be understood. It renders Newton even more archaic. It renders Einstein passé and so forth. It seems to me that we do have this sort of fashionable aspect of physics, which, is our current, the zeitgeist of general relativity and quantum mechanics. Do you really think that zeitgeist has got any sense of true permanence in a large sense? Fast forward 500 years and look at the exponential rate of the increase of knowledge. Do we really believe that QM and GR will be around as paradigms in, say, 500 years, do you?
Well, it's a great question, and I think the answer is no, but that's not a reason for despair, at least as I see it. In the sense that, we still teach our students Newton's mechanics, right? That's, not 500 years since Newton, but several hundred. And so we no longer think the universe runs exactly as Newton had taught us, but the way of analyzing things we can observe that Newton had bequeathed is still unbelievably helpful and powerful, and our newer ideas have to, kind of incorporate those results even as they move beyond them. And I think that is likely to be what's going to happen with both quantum mechanics and general relativity. I don't think either of them is necessarily the final word, certainly general relativity. There are all kinds of reasons from within the structure of general relativity to say this probably isn't everything, right? This might be pointing to where it itself might break down. But any other, the next grander, more amazing, strange concoction is likely to incorporate at least the things that we have really wrestled with hard about Einstein's relativity. So those might not be anymore the fundamental, bedrock answer for why things behave the way they do, but it would be a pretty good account for why they do, and we might have a kind of underneath reasoning that would on which that would rest, much like we'd say with, say, Newton's laws today or Maxwell's equations for electricity and magnetism. And we still, MIT students still all the time will buy T-shirts with Maxwell's equations on the front, which I love. They always wear them to my class. And, we'd say, Maxwell's equations. We now know about quantum theory and electrons and charges, things that Maxwell didn't even know about. And yet the equations are both worth putting on a T-shirt and worth teaching for semesters at a time because they're incredibly powerful. And they've captured something about the world, even if they're not the final word.
So, indeed, we have this incredible checks and balances web in place now that just wasn't there 100 years ago. So every new thing that we posit has to pass all the tests that we've thought of since that time. And as we go on in time, would you not agree that the checks and balances are a very, very good guide to where to go next? But I see also a dark side to that. Do you not also that perhaps it might be inhibitory in terms of making large leaps.
Well, I see what you mean. And so that was part of what I was interested in writing this book, actually, is, when does the mainstream rule out questions as somehow, outre, as not questions worth asking? I think that becomes dangerous. I do think that's right. Or at least, I wouldn't want to see that that can be overdone. And that's where I think groups like the one I wrote about in Berkeley in the 70s, they were no longer beholden to those kind of, we might say, fashions or the opinions of the mainstream. They carved out this parallel universe and kind of crawled back in. That level of the out-of-the-box thinking that I think is better supported now than back then. That's where I say there's a wider safety net now for ideas that are not necessarily, in that sense, fashionable or going along with what most people already believe. We have, I think, really good reasons to believe what we do, but let's not lose sight of the fact that these are likely to be upended, or at least could be upended as well. And so in that sense, I think you're right, that there can be a kind of taste question. That doesn't smell like a good topic, don't work on it. And that, I think, could be a very difficult situation to overcome for young scientists starting out.
Let me just ask a fast question here as we're getting to the tail end of this program. And that is false research. We hear about it occasionally where people either claim to have scientific credentials or don't, or they falsify the research. They try to take shortcuts. How do you have checks and balances in the system to overcome this tendency?
You're right, and it happens, I would say, at least as much now as in other periods from anyway. That it's hard to get good measures on the frequency of these things, but there is reason to believe we haven't licked that system. I think we can understand some of the motivations for why it happens, and those motivations are probably not going to go away anytime soon. It has to do with things like, like we talked about before. Well, ego, but also I would say even more mundane, difficulty getting research grants, the kind of rat race of trying to get the resources you need to ask the hard questions. There can certainly be temptations to cut corners. That obviously doesn't make it right. It also can make it pretty hard to catch. I mean, people will say, we'll just rely on peer review. Peer review, of course, is fallible. There was that famous case from just about a decade ago at Bell Labs where a young researcher had to retract, I think, at least 20 articles that were published not just in any old peer-reviewed journals, but in Science, Nature, Physical Review Letters, the most prestigious, most carefully vetted journals on the planet. And these were not one or two, but I think on the order of 20 of them that were formally retracted, something like that. So it's not, peer review is important, but that's not the panacea either. So I think, we can understand the part of the kind of sociology behind how it might happen. And, quite frankly, I don't have a good answer other than, obviously peer review, obviously careful vetting and a kind of openness in data sets and all that, which might go some part of the way. But I don't think we're going to lick it. I think that's I don't think it's a huge problem. I don't want to exaggerate saying it's behind every corner, but it's there and it hasn't gone away.
And by the same token, the availability of grants in certain areas of research, that kind of precludes other areas unless there's a bunch of hippies sitting in a coffee shop in San Francisco and thinking about the future.
Well, I mean, this goes back to this question of fads and fashions. And, there are kind of tastemakers in science, believe it or not. And so you're right. You want to make sure that those are not sort of really cutting off ideas or people who obviously have things to contribute, even if they might not be in that same direction.
Well, what's in the future for you? I'm sure this book is being well received, and do you have any other books in the works or any other literary projects that you're working on, or what's on your event horizon now?
Yeah, so a couple of things. I mean, on the physics side, I'm indeed still working on the cosmology and actually trying to play with an idea that might combine the Higgs boson with a modification of Einstein's relativity to understand the early universe. I don't think it's the best answer, but it's intriguing. And then in terms of books, there's a project I'm working on that I've been really enjoying. It's a political history of Einstein's gravity. Let's understand general relativity as, like these hippies, as always embedded in times and place. The people who are spending their lives studying it are, interrupted by war. They're involved in the Cold War. They're involved in all kinds of things. And it's a way of understanding, science in context in a very kind of immediate, personal way. And that stretches over really the entire 20th century. So that's a book I've actually really been enjoying as well. Another book on sort of the politics of science policy and how do we handle things like challenges from either the Soviet Union or more recently China and India about these numbers of degrees granted per year and that kind of thing. How does that shape what we think science should be like or what we want to train our students to do? So that's another book that I'm chipping away at.
Excellent, worthy topics. Much luck and success. And again, if those books are anything like How the Hippies Saved Physics, I'll be reading them. That's for sure. I really did enjoy the book. And it was really kind of you to come on a lowly paranormal show and talk some science. And I was very grateful to have Andrew Palfreyman in here, who was quite the scientist in his own right. And it's been a real pleasure, David, and thank you so much for being on the show. And I think Gene will agree that this is going to be an exciting episode, and we're going to generate quite a bit of banter, I'm sure, on the Paracast forums, which is located at forum.theparacast.com for all you future posters. Let's get a thread going on this show. This is going to be a lot of fun.
The book, of course, is called How the Hippies Saved Physics, Science, Counterculture, and the Quantum Revival. The guest has been David Kaiser, professor at MIT. David, thanks for joining us this week on the Paracast.
Well, thank you so much. I really enjoyed it. I appreciate your invitation.
The Paracast, featuring Gene Steinberg and Christopher O'Brien, is a copyrighted presentation of Making the Impossible, Incorporated. Tune in next week for a new adventure in The Paracast.